Welcome to the Third Row Tesla podcast. My name is Safian Farval, and today we have a very special guest. But before I introduce our special guest, I'm going to go through and introduce our crew. So our regular Third Row Tesla podcast crew. So today we have Omar Kazi, Tesla Truth.
Boom.
And we have Kristen from
Hi.
K10. Thank you. And we got Vincent Yu from Tasmanian. Hi. All right, great. And then we got Galileo Russell from Hyperchange.
What up, third row?
And then we got Viv, who's Falcon Heavy.
Hey.
Great. All right, Omar, do you want to introduce our guest?
Please welcome the inventor of the car fart, Elon Musk.
Thank you. Thank you. Please put that on my gravestone.
Love it.
So, yeah, it's kind of crazy that we're actually all here. And thank you so much for doing this.
You're welcome.
We're all Tesla customers, fans, and it's really good that it's finally happening. And I remember that I was looking at your Wikipedia tweet that it's like this bizarre fictionalized version of reality.
Yeah.
And I replied to him, like, why don't you come on a podcast and like tell your fictionalized version of reality?
Sure, exactly. Until my fictionalized version.
And you replied, okay, sure. And I was kind of like taken by surprise by that. And, you know, the way you engage and listen to your customers online, it's like, I've never seen anything like that from, you know, a CEO of a public company or
Sure.
any executive. So can you tell us a little bit where that came from, why you communicate directly instead of like having this PR strategy that most companies have?
Sure. Well, I mean, it started out, I actually had one of the very first Twitter accounts, like when it was like less than 10,000 people. And then everyone was tweeting at me like what kind of latte they had at Starbucks. And I'm like, well, this seems like the silliest thing ever. So I deleted my Twitter account, and then someone else took it over and started tweeting in my name. Yeah. And then a couple of friends of mine, Will Lee and Jason Calcanis, they both said, hey, you should really use Twitter to get your message out, and also somebody's tweeting in your name and they're saying crazy things. So I was like, I'll say crazy things in my name.
Did you have to pay them?
No, they I'm not sure who it was, but it was for some reason. I don't know. I got my account back.
Great.
And then I was just, I don't know. To some degree, it's like just sort of. I just started tweeting for fun, really. And my early tweets were quite crazy. As I was trying to explain, like the arc of insanity is short, in that it's not very steep, because it started off insane, and so if it's still insane, it's it hasn't changed that much. Yeah, and I don't know. It seemed kind of fun to. I think I've said this before. It's like, some people use their hair to express myself. I use Twitter.
Yeah, I love that.
Why do you like Twitter so much? I mean, you could use Instagram,
As
for
opposed to
example,
other
but
platforms.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, like I don't trust Facebook, obviously, and then Instagram is fine, but it's I think not exactly my style. It's hard to convey a sort of intellectual arguments on Instagram. It's hard on Twitter too, but it's but you can't. It's so. Instagram is also owned by Facebook, and I was like,
Deleted.
Yeah, I just deleted it. It's like I don't really need to if I need to say something, I only really need to say it on one platform, pretty much. And so if I'm trying, and I don't want to spend too much time on social media, so it's just like, if people want to know what I'm saying, then they can just sort of go to Twitter. I'll just keep doing that as long as Twitter is good, I suppose, more good than bad. Yeah. Crypto scammers are really...
I understand that.
They've been taking advantage of Vincent recently.
Yeah, I know.
Really?
Yeah, there's like 10 Vincents out there.
Oh, right. But they copy everything and just like change one
Yeah,
little
they
thing.
use my avatars and then the picture, and then they just post like right below,
Yeah.
your tweet, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
I was like, wow.
Yeah.
And they blocked me too.
We fight them all the time. We're always like reporting them. Like every day we report like 10 people. Yeah.
Yeah, I have so many exactly conversations with Twitter. Like, come on, can you just like? I think it would take like 3 or 4 customer service people to just look at this. It's crypto scam. Block it.
It should be easy.
It should be easy.
Should be easy.
But then, like my wife, Vegan Shelly, I think you liked her tweet the other day. She got banned for like replying to one of your tweets and quoting like the video inside of it, and then she got suspended for like a day or something. I was like, "What the heck is going
strange,
on?"
yeah.
So it's just weird how the algorithm works.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, there's a lot of manipulation, but going back to the Wikipedia page, it's kind of interesting. Just
Sure.
What a decade you've had. I remember I was reading somebody's article. I think they interviewed you in 2009 or something like that, and they said, if you had met Elon Musk in 2009, right after the recession, they're like struggling with the Roadster. You never would have thought that you are where you are today. You're, launching astronauts into space.
We will be, hopefully.
Well, this year, servicing the International Space Station. I mean, Tesla with the Model 3, the Model Y, electrification really, without Tesla, it would not be where it is today. You see where the other legacy automakers are, they're not doing great. So, looking at kind of like this, like you've become this legendary figure, and looking at kind of like how people kind of see you, kind of the Ashley Vance biography or Wikipedia page, what is it that really kind of sticks out to you or, makes you laugh? Like that's just completely off base.
Yeah. Well, I think I mentioned that I kept getting referred to as an investor in like a bunch of things. And it's like, but I actually don't invest really except in companies that I help create. So I only have the only publicly traded share that I have at all is Tesla. I have no diversity on publicly traded shares.
it's like us.
Yeah, nothing. So, that's quite unusual. So, almost everyone diversifies to some degree. And then the only stock that I have of significance outside of Tesla is SpaceX, which is a private corporation, and then in order to get liquidity, which is mostly to reinvest in SpaceX and Tesla, and occasionally in provide funding for much smaller projects like Neuralink and Boring Company, then I'll actually take out loans against the Tesla and SpaceX stock. So what I actually have is whatever my Tesla and SpaceX stock is, and then there's about $1 billion of debt against that. So, which it's this is sometimes taken to imply that I'm claiming that I have no money, which I'm not claiming. But it's simply to make it clear that you'll see some number, some big number in Forbes or something. People will think I have the Tesla and SpaceX stock and I have the cash. Mm-mm. And I'm being somehow I'm just sitting on the cash and doing nothing with it, and hoarding resources. I'm like, no, it's the only alternative would be to say, okay, let's give the stock to the government or something, and then the government would be running things, and the government just is not good at running things. That's the main thing. I think there's a fundamental sort of question of consumption versus capital allocation. This is probably gonna get me into trouble, but the paradigm of say communism versus capitalism, I think, is fundamentally sort of orthogonal to the reality of actual economics in some ways. So what you actually care about is the responsiveness of the feedback loops to the maximizing the happiness of the population. And if more resources are controlled by entities that have poor response in their feedback loops, so if it's a monopoly corporation or a small oligopoly, or in the limit, I would say a monopolistic corporation in the limit is the government. So this is not to say people who work at the government are bad. If those same people are taken and put in a better sort of operating system situation, the outcome will be much better. So it's really just what is the responsiveness of the organization to maximizing the happiness of the people, and so you want to have a competitive situation where it's truly competitive, where companies aren't gaming the system, and then where the rules are set correctly, and then you need to be on the alert for regulatory capture, where the referees are in fact captured by the players, which is and the players should not control the referees, essentially, which can happen. I think like that happened, for example, with I think the zero emission vehicle mandate in California, where California was like really strict on EVs, and then the car companies managed to sort of, frankly, in my view, trick the regulators into saying, okay, you don't need to be so hardcore about the EVs, and instead you say fuel cells of the future. But fuel cells are, of course, many years away, so forever. So they let up the rules, and then GM recalled the EV1 and crushed them in
Exactly.
a junkyard, which was against the wishes of the owner.
Yeah. I mean, they all lined up to buy them, and they wouldn't let them buy them.
I mean, Chris Payne did this great documentary on it, and it's like the owners of the EV1, which by the way wasn't actually that great of a car, but they still wanted the electric car so bad that they held a candlelit vigil at the junkyard where cars were crushed.
Oh wow!
Like it was like a prisoner being executed or something like that.
Yeah.
That was literally.
I know.
And like,
So
when
painful.
is the last time you even heard of that for a product?
Right.
GM stops the product. I mean, what? I mean, listen, man, they're not doing that for any other GM product.
No.
Have you thought about doing the EV2? It's kind of sometimes hard to get through these guys. So anyway, I think that's a very important thing. So generally, we could see like these oligopolies forming, or duopolies, and then you get effective price fixing, and then they cut back on the R&D budget. Like kind of a silly one, frankly, is like candy. Like there's a candy oligopoly, and it's like we don't see much innovation in candy.
So you're still working on the candy company.
Crypto candy, is that?
Boring candy.
Boring candy.
The
Wasn't
boring
it?
candy?
It's going to be boring candy.
I haven't seen a candy yet that's good enough to send out, but and it's but I think it's there's like 3 companies or something that control all the candy in the world pretty much.
It's crazy.
And dog food. Yeah, somebody constructed like this. It's this crazy conglomerate, and it's like dog food and baby food and candy, and it's like all
Other brands.
A rendering.
Yeah,
Hundreds of brands.
yeah. You think you're buying from different companies, but it all funnels up to like 3 companies or something like that.
Don't send the rendering food to the candy company.
Yeah.
Yeah, big candy.
So you want to have like a good competitive forcing function, so that you have to make the product better, or you'll lose. Like if you don't make the product better and improve the product for the end consumer, then that company should have relatively less prosperity compared to a company that makes better products. Now the car industry, is actually pretty competitive, so that's good. But the good thing about a competitive industry is then if you make a product that's better, it's going to do better in the marketplace.
Definitely.
So this is Gene Wilder's old house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw that. That's
I saw the
amazing.
photos over there.
It's lovely. Thanks for having us here as well.
thank
It's
you.
really special.
Yeah, it's a cool spot, and it's got a solar glass roof.
Yeah.
Do you see that?
Version 2, right?
We didn't notice it, but
Yes.
we checked it out the second time.
Yeah, I'm waiting for my 3, so I'm waiting for version 3. Well, whatever they're going to put on, I don't care.
Give me version 3.
Yeah,
Yeah.
looking forward to it.
Yeah, we saw it at the store in Torrance. Actually, they've got it
Yeah.
in the stores now. Yeah, looks really good.
Well, it's actually designed such that you don't notice it. So, because like this, look at this old house. This is it's an old house. I don't know, probably 50 years old, something like that, and it's quite quirky. So if you put something on that was like didn't blend in, that it would not look right. It would be pretty strident, and this had a black comp shingle roof, so I was like, okay, let's see if we can actually have it weave in and still feel natural, look good, and and I think it's sort of achieved that goal. But yeah, this is a lovely, quirky little house. I'll show you around afterwards. It's got all sorts of weird things. It's exactly what. Sorry?
Is it Frank Lloyd? Right?
No, I don't think so. I think it was just built in increments over time by probably several people. But they would have just knocked it down and built a giant house here. So it's like,
So glad they didn't.
yeah, it's super cool.
It's really amazing.
So, Gene Wilder is one of my favorite actors, actually. So he's great. Awesome movies.
So when you come up with a product like the solar glass roof, I think a lot of people misunderstand that like your goal is to bring these crazy technologies to market and really create a change in the world.
Yeah.
And so I think it's fascinating that you do it through companies, and it seems like the fastest way to create that feedback loop and to really like go from inventing something to millions of people using it right away.
Yes.
So it seems like buying a Tesla is almost like the best thing you could do to help the climate crisis, because you're like turbocharging R&D and products and innovation. I feel like not enough people really understand that.
That is. I think there's lots of good things people can do for the climate, but just generally anything that is moving towards sustainable energy, whether it's sustainable energy generation through solar or with an electric vehicle. Actually, just things like better insulation in a house is really effective for energy consumption. But fundamentally, oh geez, Marvin. It's ingratiating. That's Marvin the Martian.
Oh.
I actually got him a little, for Halloween, a little knitted Marvin the Martian cap. So he had the little, the helmet with the, it looked super cute.
You got enough, buddy?
So did you always know, like, business was the way you wanted to kind of attack these problems versus, say, maybe a nonprofit or, working as a college professor or something? I don't know.
Well, when I was in high school, I thought I would most likely be doing physics at a particle accelerator. So that's what I was, physics and computers. I mean, I got distinctions in two areas, in physics and computer science, and those were, some of my two best subjects. And then I thought, okay, well, I want to figure out what's the nature of the universe, and so go try to working with people, banging particles together, see what happens, and then it sort of things went along, and the superconducting super collider got canceled in the U.S., and that actually was like, whoa, what if I am working at a collider? It's been all these years, and then the government just cancels it.
Wow.
And then was like, I'm not going to do that. So it's like, so well, we roll back a little. Like I was trying to figure out when I was a kid, I had like this existential crisis. I don't know, I was about 12 years old or something, and I was like, well, what does the world mean? What's it all about? Are we living some meaningless existence? And then I made the mistake of reading Nietzsche and Schopenhauer, and I'm like, whoa, don't do that. Not for me to be a little older, I think. No, and actually, lately, these days, I sort of reread it. So I was like, he's not that bad. He's got issues. No question about it. But it's anyway. But then I read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Douglas Adams, which is like quite a good book on philosophy, I think. And I was like, okay, we don't really know what the answer is, obviously. But the universe is the answer. And really, what are the questions we should be asking to better understand the nature of the universe? And so then, to the degree that we expand the scope and scale of consciousness, then we'll better be able to ask the questions. And understand why we're here or what it's all about. And so we should sort of take the set of actions that are most likely to result in us understanding what questions to ask about the nature of the universe. therefore we must propagate human civilization on Earth as far into the future as possible, and become a multi-planet species to, again, extend the scope and scale of consciousness and increase the probable lifespan of consciousness, which is going to be, I think, probably a lot of machine consciousness as well in the future. Mm-hmm. And that's the best we can do, basically, and yeah, that's the best we can do. So, and thinking about the various problems that we're facing, or what would most likely change the future, when they were in college, there were sort of 5 things that I thought would be. I thought these were actually these. I would not regard this as a profound insight, but rather an obvious one. The internet would fundamentally change humanity, because it's like humanity would become more of a superorganism, because the internet is like a nervous system. Mm. Now suddenly, any part of the human organisms anywhere would have access to all the information.
Amazing.
Instantly.
Neuralink.
Hey, well, I can imagine if you didn't have a nervous system, you wouldn't know what's going on. Your fingers wouldn't know what's going on. Or your toes wouldn't know what's going on. You'd have to do it by diffusion.
Oh gosh.
And and the way information used to work was really by diffusion. One human would have to call another human,
or actually go
write
there.
them. Yes, like if it was a letter, you would have to write a letter. You'd have to hand that letter to another human. That would be carried through a bunch of things. Find another person would give it to you.
Inefficient.
Extremely slow diffusion. And if you wanted access to books, if you did not have a library, you don't have it. That's it.
Right.
So now you have access to all the books instantly, and if you can be in a remote, mountaintop jungle location or something, and have access to all of humanity's information if you've got a link to the internet. This is a fundamental, profound change. So that's one thing. I was on the internet early because of in the physics community that was pretty normal, although its interface was almost entirely text and hard to use. But then another one would be obviously making life multiplanetary, making consciousness multiplanetary, changing human genetics, which obviously I'm not doing, by the way. There's a thorny subject, but it is being done with CRISPR and others. It will become normal to I think, to change the human genome. It will become normal.
Like, what's the opportunity? Like, why is that something that's inevitable? Or,
well, I think for sure, as far as say getting rid of diseases or propensity to various diseases, then that's gonna be like the first thing that you'd want to edit out. So it's like if you've got like a situation where you're definitely going to die of some kind of cancer at age 55, I prefer to have that edited out.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think it's just edit that out. There's the Gattaca sort of extreme thing where it's not really edited out, but it's like it's edited in for various enhancements and that kind of thing, which probably will come too. But I'm not saying arguing for or against it. I'm just saying this. More likely to come than not down the road. Yeah. So then AI, really major one.
So these are all big motivational factors, to keep our consciousness going.
Oh, and it's sustainable. Yes. Yeah. So sustainable energy. So sustainable energy actually was something that I thought was important before the environmental implications became as obvious as they are. It's simply because if you mine and burn hydrocarbons, then you're going to run out of them. Because it's not like mining sort of say metals, for example. If you we recycle steel and aluminum, and because that's just it's not a change of energy state. Whereas if you take fossil fuels, you're taking some from a high energy state, converting it to a lower energy state like CO2, which is extremely stable. So whereas we will never run out of metals, not a problem. We will run out of mined hydrocarbons. And then necessarily, if we've got billions, ultimately trillions of tons of hydrocarbons that were buried deep underground in solid, liquid, or gas form, whatever, but they're deep underground. You sort of move them from deep underground to the oceans and atmosphere, you will have a change in the chemistry of the surface, obviously. And then there's just a certain probability associated with, well, how bad will that be? And the range of possibilities goes from mildly bad to extremely bad. But then why would you run that experiment? That seems like the craziest experiment ever. Especially since we have to go to sustainable energy anyway. Why would you run that experiment? It's just the maddest thing I've ever heard. I'm not saying there shouldn't be some use of hydrocarbons on Earth, but there just should be the correct price placed on CO2 production. And the obvious thing to do is have a carbon tax. It's a no-brainer. I don't know, 90+% of economists would say this, and I think of physicists, and it's just the market system works well if you've got the right price on things. It's very, very simple. And if you've got a price of zero, effectively, or very low, then it's people will behave accordingly. So it's just that's the thing that needs to get done. I think it will get done. And then if over time, as you raise the price on carbon, you can actually, I think, encourage sequestration technologies over time. And there'll be a lot of innovation in that regard. And that's the right way to do it.
So you had these realizations about, areas of big value, and you went and started Zip2. You sold it, got 20 million cash. You were the largest shareholder of PayPal at the time. eBay acquired it. I think you got 160 million or something like that. You have enough money basically for an entire lifetime. Why go and put your money into SpaceX, which is a huge, risky operation, or Tesla? Why not just kind of, relax?
Sure. Basically, I graduated from Penn with basically physics and economics, and then we actually did a road trip to Stanford with Robin Wren, who was in my physics class, and now works at Tesla, actually.
That's cool.
Yeah, and he grew up in Shanghai.
Yeah.
So,
That's cool.
he's a very smart guy. He ended up continuing at Stanford, and I ended up going on deferment a couple days into the semester. But I was going to be studying material science and the physics of high energy density capacitors for use in electric vehicles. So the intent was, I was going to go, okay, I'm going to work on energy storage solutions for electric vehicles. And I'd worked at a company called Pinnacle Research for a couple summers that did high energy density capacitors. I was going to try to do effectively like a solid state version of what they were doing with it's going to get very complicated from a technical standpoint, but they were using a ruthenium tantalum oxide. Ruthenium is extremely rare and expensive. You cannot scale that. So it's like, can you find a substitute for ruthenium? But we're able to get to energy densities comparable to a lead-acid battery, but with incredibly high power density. So,
what do you want?
I can go down a deep rabbit hole there, but
what's the purpose of a supercapacitor in an EV?
Ultracapacitor.
No, I think with the advent of high-energy lithium-ion batteries, a capacitor is not the right path.
What was your thinking back then, though, that made you think it could be useful for EVs?
I want to use advanced chip-making equipment to make capacitors that were precise at a molecular level. So at the, just a level of precision that was sort of unheard of in capacitors. Like capacitors, energy is a function of its area. And a separation distance. So if you can have very tiny separation distance, and you can inhibit quantum tunneling, like so, how do things get pretty esoteric? So you're going to inhibit quantum tunneling, get a very short gap, and then you could, in theory, get to very high energy densities by making capacitors in the way that you would make an x86 processor. And since there were tens of millions of dollars going into chip making R&D, that I thought there might be a way to make an advanced capacitor using chip making equipment instead of the conventional means.
So is it off the table, ultracapacitor?
It's unnecessary.
Okay.
Interesting.
It's unnecessary. I think it's probably physically possible, but it's unnecessary at this point.
I mean, I know a lot of people were talking about Maxwell, and they'd been working on some stuff with capacitors.
But the funny thing is that when I was doing my internships at this advanced capacitor company called Pinnacle Research, which was in Las Gatas, we talked a lot about Maxwell. And Maxwell was also trying to make high energy density capacitors. Now Tesla acquired Maxwell.
It's so
Full
cool.
circle. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
We're looking forward to that investor day.
Yeah.
It's kind of a big deal.
That's great. Great to know.
Maxwell has a bunch of technologies that where if they're applied in the right way, I think can have a very big impact.
Like the dry electrode stuff?
That would be one of them.
Oh,
That's a big deal.
Yeah, for sure.
okay.
Much bigger deal than it may seem. Yeah. And there's a few other things.
With the space that it takes up for the ovens, that for the current technology, you can save all that real estate space now. That's one aspect, and the cost reduction, the weight savings. I mean, there's so many pluses, right?
Yes, I mean there's many things there, but I'll have to wait until whatever battery day,
Sure.
which is hopefully in a few months. But I think we've got some pretty exciting things to share. So.
Gally's very excited.
Yeah, it seems like the pace of the innovation of the battery thing has just taken off. Like since you guys have more capital and being able to like have the Gigafactory be vertically integrated, just seems like no other car company is making that many batteries. So they're not even thinking about what comes next. But that
They're not
huge
even,
Come close. Not even come close at all.
I can 201 miles.
not even.
That's a joke.
Yeah, no, it's true. The other car companies just really want to outsource battery technology. Not even making this battery module and cell, but they're obviously outsourcing the cells, but even outsourcing the modules and the packs.
Yeah.
And it's like they're really not thinking about fundamental chemistry improvements, and there's some pretty deep wizardry at Tesla on this front. I should say a bit about like electric vehicles or sustainable energy in general. I said it was pretty, I think, obvious to not just to me, but to a lot of people, even go back 30 years or longer, that we must have a sustainable energy solution. In fact, it's tautological. If it's not sustainable, we must at some point find an alternative to it. Mm-hmm. And so, even if there were no environmental impact to the sort of fossil fuel economy, then we would run out of them, and then we'd have economic collapse, and civilization would fall apart. Yeah. So that was actually my initial motivation for electric vehicles. It's like, okay, we've got to have a solution that does not require mining hydrocarbons. That is sustainable in the long term. It was not actually initially from an environmental standpoint, because I had not realized the gravity of the environmental situation at that time. And I thought, actually, for sure, by now we'd have electric cars.
For sure.
But
Are we back on the moon?
yeah, totally. Why are we not back on the moon?
Exactly.
It's insane.
It is insane.
If you told somebody in '69 that we'd not be back on the moon, and in like 2020, they'd be like, you might have gotten punched, honestly, because they'd be like, you're just, it's like so insultingly rude to the future of humanity. Because they'd be like, what is wrong with you?
It's encouraging. SpaceX is encouraging, though.
Yeah. So it's like we should have a base on the moon. We should have sent people to Mars. None of that's occurred. We've got to make that happen. Yeah, so but on the sustainability front, it was really, like I said, initially not so much from an environmental standpoint, but from a necessity of replacing a finite resource in order to ensure that civilization could continue to grow. And then the urgency of it became much more obvious, like, wow, we really better do something, because the environmental stuff is becoming quite serious. And the inertia of large existing companies is just hard to appreciate. They just want to keep doing the same thing, and maybe 5% different every year, maybe 5% different. big companies hate change. So then at the time that Tesla, was created, there was no one was doing electric cars. No, there weren't really startups. The big car companies weren't doing it. GM and Toyota canceled their EV programs.
Now everybody's doing it right now. Like,
And their mom.
Everybody's talking
Mom.
about it.
Everyone and their mom is doing it.
and we would all like to congratulate about the Gigafactory 3.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Epic.
amazing. And I would like to know, like, why China is the best country to build the first foreign Gigafactory.
China is the biggest consumer of cars in the world. So it's the biggest, so that alone would be enough to do it. I think also there was a lot of uncertainty about tariffs, and it's like we potentially would be unable to sell effectively in China if we did not have a factory locally.
Yes.
Or at least unable to sell at prices that weren't extremely high. But those are really the two main reasons. I think that, but I think there's also a third important reason that there's just so much talent and drive in China that I think it's a good place to do a lot of things. And the evidence is there in the incredible progress in the factory, which was built with very, very high quality in a very short period of time. The cars coming out of Shanghai are already very high quality.
Oh, I can tell, and the run rate is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that they use the Chinese badge as well. It's like a symbol of pride and made in China. So
it's cool. It's super cool.
How did Tesla manage to get the first wholly owned foreign car company in China?
Yeah.
I mean, a factory.
I've went to China many times, and they kept saying that we would have to do this, majority local owned venture. And I said that, and we had to partner with someone. I said, we're a little late to the dance here, so who would we partner with? There's nobody left, and also we're just a little company, so they kept saying we should get married, and we're a bit young.
That's a good example.
We're young, and then also as pointing out, there's certainly Chinese companies that are going to, they're establishing factories in the US. I mean, there's like Faraday Future and that kind of thing, and that's 100% owned by them. And so, to be fair, it should be allowed that an American car company should be able to own its factory in China as well. And so we, talked to them for over a number of years, and they eventually said, okay, well, we'll change the law. So they changed the law. But now other companies can do it as well. So it's not just limited to Tesla.
And how much of that production hell, like learnings, have really enabled? Because I don't want to like to bring up CapEx, but one of my favorite things is the stats in the shareholder letter. It's so much cheaper, not only faster, but it seems like you guys have learned so much from the Fremont factory, and that really enabled like kind of a turbocharged build for Shanghai.
Yeah, I think the big difference is like we are way less dumb than we were. So the foolishness of capital expenditures was very high, and it's less high now. And then with the Shanghai factory, we designed out all of or as much of the foolishness as we could think of that exists at Fremont and in Nevada. So we just made a lot of decisions that weren't smart, and we designed those out such the production line is much simpler. So it's much simpler and better implemented. And then we also found like that in most cases the suppliers were more efficient in China as well than in the US. So but we've also managed to get a lot more output from existing equipment in the US as well. So The Model 3 body line in Fremont, for example, was only ever meant to do 5,000 cars, Model 3s a week, and it's doing 7,000.
Wow.
Nice.
So,
Wow, nice.
and it, with turning off a bunch of unnecessary things that were being done. So, I mean, there was a lot of foolish things that we were doing. So, and we changed some of the designs and made it easier to. It's like hundreds of little things to make it easier to build, and so being able to get 40% more output off the same line obviously makes a big difference, and while reducing the cost, the marginal cost of production, and I think improving the quality of the car. So it's all good stuff. It was the result of a ton of hard work by a lot of people. So yeah, but it was kind of necessary in that we didn't really have a place to put a second Model 3 body line. So it's like we either make this one go faster or we will not be able to achieve production. But the Model 3 body line in Shanghai is much simpler than the one in, and I say that in a good way, because it has the same end result. So if you know, but it's a much easier to understand. There's just getting rid of unnecessary movement. There's a lot of unnecessary movement in the Fremont body line, but not in Shanghai.
So you guys said in the production letter that you just started battery production in Shanghai too, and I heard that you guys were getting cells from Cattle and LG Chem. Are the cells basically kind of like a commodity part that you can assemble into your battery packs there, or does it make a difference? How do you see that long term?
I believe these cells are not yet from LG. We do expect to use locally produced cells, but I'm I don't. Just to be clear, I don't always know exactly what's going on everywhere in the 50,000 person company. So some of the things, like most of the things I say will be correct, but there may be occasionally something that's not. As to the best of my knowledge, we're not yet using LG Chem cells. We're using Panasonic cells made in Nevada.
But LG Chem can make pretty much the same cells as Panasonic?
Yes, but pretty much is not the same as same. So there's still a few bugs to work out with the LG Chem cells before we can use them in our module and battery pack production system. The CATL cells, or the CATL situation will be more of an integrated module than it will be a cell, and that's so that it's not just it's not super easy to replace these things. But yeah, we do expect to use CATL. We do expect to use LG. Currently, we're using Panasonic. When I say expect to use, I mean like literally a matter of months. So by the middle of this year, we probably be using both LG and CATL in volume.
Wow.
So we were talking about a lot of Tesla stuff, but we kind of wanted to ask you about your personal history, because you were saying how there's some misconceptions you would like to make straight. And Ashley Vance wrote a book about you. I just read May's lovely book, and it was really wonderful. I loved it and learned a little bit more history about your family and you. But what are some of the misconceptions that you would like to correct?
Most of this is just ended up being kind of water under the bridge that people didn't notice that much. I mean, there's this sort of some stories in there where it sounds like I fired people all of a sudden and arbitrarily, which was not the case. It just Ashley asked somebody who didn't know what was going on, and then that person was suddenly not there, and they didn't know why.
Yeah.
But I definitely do not fire talented people, unless there's no option. So
yeah.
And absolutely not without warning. Or
I keep hearing you say "we." Like it sounds like you're always thinking of everybody. I see you as a very selfless person in your endeavors.
Thanks.
Yeah. I mean, seriously. I mean, yeah. it's like from the age of 12, it sounds like you've been thinking about how to help humanity.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to be sort of like some, the sort of savior or something like that, but it's really just that if it just seems like I don't know, seems like the obvious thing to do. I can't, like, I'm not sure why you do anything else. We want to maximize happiness of the population and propagate into the future as far as possible and understand the nature of reality. And from that, I think everything else follows.
I saw you on Twitter, like talking about how, like, people are having this rumor that you've been wealthy your whole life, and that would be like the only reason you became successful. And you've debunked that. And can you like share more about your upbringing and what led you to going to North America when you?
Sure. I was in South Africa, and it seemed like wherever there was, like, a lot of the advanced technology in the world was being produced in America, and Silicon Valley especially. So I wanted to be where I could sort of have an impact on technology. So that's or be involved in the creation of new technology. So that's what prompted me to go to at first Canada, because I could get citizenship in Canada through my mom, and then ultimately to the US. But yeah, I just left South Africa when I was 17 and landed in Montreal. I had like, I don't know, about $2,000 Canadian. And I started staying in a youth hostel for a few days, and then there was this, you could buy a ticket to go across the country for $100 and stop along the way. And so I bought that and just took a Greyhound across Canada and saw all these like little towns. Well, we were getting. I didn't have much. I had like a backpack and a suitcase of books. But the bus company, Greyhound, they unloaded it in one of the cities, and then the bus left without my stuff.
Oh, that's nice.
So I literally had nothing.
All your books.
But your clothes too?
Actually, weirdly, I think I might have had the books thing, but not my clothes.
That was priorities.
All you needed.
Yeah, because I was just sitting in the bus station reading, waiting for the bus to get ready. Yeah. And I think I had the books, but no clothing.
Oh
no! So, anyway, but I managed to get to Swift Current, Saskatchewan, and then it's your cousin's son, yeah, has a wheat farm there, and I worked on the wheat farm for about 6 weeks.
Wow.
I turned 18 in Saskatchewan. It's in this town called Swift Current.
So that was summertime, right? It was June.
Yeah, June 28th.
So, because I've been there in the winter and it's like minus 40.
Yeah.
You don't want to be traveling there.
Yeah.
Did you ice skate? Did you try ice skating?
No, it was quite warm.
Okay. Oh, well, I mean, in the winter. Did you stay for the winter?
Were you there in the winter?
No, I was there for about 6 weeks.
Oh, you're lucky you survived. That's good.
Yeah, so
it's cold there.
Literally working on the wheat farm. We did a barn raising and I cleared out the wheat bins, the grain silos, that kind of thing. And I just worked the vegetable patch, basically just doing various things.
Was your mind just thinking of what you're going to do after that?
Yeah, I was trying to figure out what I do next. Don't know what to do. So then I ended up getting back on the bus and went to Vancouver. And I had a half uncle there who was kind of in the lumber industry. He like made lumber equipment.
Sounds like the Northwest.
Yeah, basically. So I ended up chainsawing logs and working on the lumber mill and cleaning out the where they boil the pulp in these like crazy sort of boiler rooms.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that might be the hardest job I've had, actually, because you have to like crawl through this little tunnel in a hazmat suit, and then with a shovel and then shovel this sort of steaming sand and mulch out of the boilers to clean them out.
Wow.
And you had to there was only one entrance or exit, which was like a little tunnel. If you're claustrophobic, it would be real bad. And then you shovel the sand and the mulch through the tunnel, and it would actually block the tunnel, and then somebody else would reach in and shovel it out from the other side. So just big enough, long enough that if you have a shovel with a long handle, so one person on the inside can shovel it far enough that someone on the outside can shovel it out.
Wow.
And then you had to rotate every 15 minutes to avoid getting hypothermia.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
And there's no
intense.
safeties, there's just a man looking out for you.
It was just two people kind of paired up. So if one person collapses and you go to call somebody, but it'd be really hard to drag somebody out. I have to say that it does not seem safe, because if the tunnel gets blocked, trying to unblock that tunnel would be very difficult in a short period of time. So, but it was the highest paying job at the employment office. So I was like, okay, the other jobs were I don't know, $8 an hour, and this one was $18 an hour.
You had to buy your clothes, and they're all gone.
Well, they did give you a hazmat suit. So,
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
How long did you do that job for?
like 4 days.
Oh, okay.
No, but then it was done.
Yeah, that's awesome.
You said it was like a short-term thing, cleaning grain bins, cleaning the
boilers.
the boiler rooms.
So what was next? We were in boiler rooms and then.
Yeah, so it's basically, yeah, I mean, literally it was like a lumberjack who's chainsawing logs, and just doing lumber stuff, basically, for a few months there. And then applied for college, and went to Queen's University in Kingston, and was there for a couple of years, and then somebody that suggested I should apply to UPenn, and I didn't think I'd be able to go, because I was paying for my own way through university, which is actually not that hard in Canada, because the tuition
System.
Yeah, the tuition's highly subsidized in Canada. So, with basically some, if you just sort of work during the summer and semester and take out some loans and get some scholarships, you can pretty much go to any college in Canada, I think. But I met someone who was at UPenn, and they said you should at least apply, and I applied, and they actually gave me quite a big scholarship. So that allowed me to go there. And so then I did the physics and economics there, and then that's what led to the road trip to Stanford with Robin Wren, and then that was during that summer that I was like, okay, I can either spend several years kind of doing a PhD, and not that I care about the PhD actually, but I just needed a lab. But I could either spend a bunch of years working in a lab, and maybe the technology would pan out, or maybe it wouldn't. But the internet was definitely about to go supernova in '95. So I was like, okay, look, I can always come back to working on electric cars, basically, and which of course I did. But the internet is not going to wait. So so then I put Stanford on deferment, and started Zip2, which was really just, we started off with maps and directions, yellow pages, white pages, that kind of thing. And it was, best of my knowledge, the first maps and directions on the internet. So there's still some patents I have. I don't know how many more, but I think they've obviously lapsed at this point. But for maps and directions and yellow pages and advertising and stuff. And I wrote the whole initial code base. I wrote personally, because there wasn't anybody else. It was just me. So, and I only had a few $1,000s, and then my brother joined, and he brought $5,000, which was a lot. Yeah, at least for the first few months, there was literally only one computer. So when the website wasn't working, it was because I was compiling code. and even to get an internet connection was pretty hard. But there was an internet service provider on the floor below us. We're more or less squatted in this office. The landlord was out of the country or something, and nobody was using it. So
you lived in there?
yeah,
I think I read that in May's book you showered at the YMCA then, right?
that's right. Yeah,
That's smart though. I mean, you were thrifty. You did what you had to do.
we just like had no money, so what are we gonna do? You know?
What did people think about Zip2 generally? Was it like seen as a crazy idea, or like did people even understand the internet back then?
Most people did not understand the internet. Most people didn't know. Even on Sand Hill Road, like we tried pitching people to invest in an internet company. Most of the VCs we pitched to had never used the internet.
Do you remember some of the VC firms you went to on Sand Hill?
I remember most of the time we wouldn't take a meeting, and if they did take the meeting, they were pretty bored and not said like who's made money in the internet? No one. We're like, no one. Okay. But the sea change occurred when Netscape went public.
Yeah.
So, but the first thing I tried to do was not start a company. I tried to get a job at Netscape, but they didn't reply to me.
Oh no. Oh.
Oh man.
So I tried hanging out in the lobby at Netscape. I don't know who to talk to. I was really too shy to talk to anyone. I don't know. So it's like, okay, I can't get a job at the only internet company that that does internet software. So then I'll try writing software. So that's kind of what happened there. Yeah, and then like I said, my brother came down and joined. This is like late '95, and then in January '95, I think it was there was a lot more interest in the internet stuff following the Netscape IPO, and the software was more impressive, I guess. So then more David Dow invested. So there were VC firm on Sand Hill Road, and they invested, I think it was like $3 million for effectively 60% of the company.
Wow.
Which we thought was crazy. They're like, well, they're going to give us the money for nothing? They must be mad. Yeah, so this seemed like crazy that they would give so much money for a company that consisted at the time of about 5 people. Like literally, I think 5 people at the time. So, but anyway, it worked out well for them in the end. So we hired a lot more people. We built out the service, and then we also ended up writing a bunch of software to bring the newspapers online. So Knight Ridder, New York Times Company, Hearst, all became investors and customers. And at one point, Zip2 was responsible for a significant section of the New York Times Company website. Yeah, so I got to know the media industry pretty well, and but over what really happened with Zip2 is it effectively got too much. There was too much control by the existing media companies, so they had too many board seats and too much voting control, and that they kept trying to push the company down directions that made no sense. So Zip2 actually had really good software. I'd say software that's comparable, in some ways more advanced than, say, a Yahoo or Excite at the time, but it was just not being used properly, and it was all being forced through media companies who would then not use it. So it's like, it's okay, we've got the best technology, but it's not being deployed properly. So, but fortunately, Compaq came along, and they Compaq had acquired Digital Equipment, and Digital Equipment had owned AltaVista, which at the time was probably the best search engine. So they thought their idea was they will combine AltaVista with a bunch of other internet companies and try to create a competitor to Yahoo or Excite. That was Excite used to be a big thing, amazingly, and Yahoo used to be a big thing.
Yeah, a long time ago.
Now it's like owned by Verizon or something.
Yeah.
Then there was AOL.
AOL. Back then.
Yahoo's a crazy story. They,
Yes.
They failed to acquire Google twice. You know, Microsoft offered them like 40 billion or something, and they turned it down.
And then Alibaba saved them out of nowhere.
The Alibaba stake was worth more than the whole company at one point.
By like, a huge amount.
Right.
It was basically a proxy for Alibaba shares trading.
Yeah, no, exactly. But at one point, I mean, at that time, like if you go back to say 98, 99, Yahoo seemed like an unstoppable juggernaut.
Yeah.
Like literally, like this company will, is a behemoth. Nobody could possibly defeat them. But anyway, and where's Compaq today? Yeah. So. But that was their idea, which is, at least if executed well, could have made sense.
Kimball!
Yeah, what are you guys doing?
We're recording a podcast.
Yeah, how do you want me to join?
Pull up a chair.
So what do you remember about Zip2?
Yeah, what do you remember?
Yeah, but then the internet came along, became this huge thing. I mean, it was always there, but it became a big deal. And then Elon was working in Silicon Valley, and as I remember it, Elon overheard a meeting where some of the Yellow Pages companies were thinking of doing sort of online Yellow Pages. And
No, why would I have been in a meeting?
I don't know. This is a long time ago. Anyway, you called me up and you said you think you can do a better job. So we think we can do a better job.
Maybe you made that up to try and get Kimball interested.
How would I be in a meeting with Yellow Pages company?
I have no idea. That's what I remember.
No.
But what's your version of that?
Sleepless nights.
I didn't even know any Yellow Pages.
I agree with you. I agree with you
Okay.
now. But so it was like I think April of 1995. We started working on it, and the I guess the idea was fairly simple: to take mapping and apply it to the internet. And there were a few other companies trying to do it, but no one with the very cool technology of sort of what was called vector-based mapping, which is what we all use today, where the map is actually alive, not just a picture.
That was very ahead of its time.
I think we were the first. I know there were other people putting maps on the internet, but I think we were the first to put vector-based mapping, which is what the kind of technology you use today on the internet, and door-to-door directions. So it was cool. I remember my brother and I pressing go on his server at our office, and it took about 60 seconds for the first door-to-door directions to come up on the screen. And even 60 seconds was amazing.
Yeah.
You were like, this is incredible. Door-to-door directions to anywhere. This is just amazing. And
Definitely seemed amazing at the time.
definitely seemed amazing at the time.
Yeah, it's like
Now it's like
It's like-
so
now it's like
absolutely
wherever.
normal, but this was like an impossible thing.
So cool.
It was so cool. And using Java, Elon had coded a interactive map, which again, all super normal stuff today, but the ability to just draw a square and zoom in or zoom out, that was just unheard of technology.
draw a square.
Yeah, you remember that? It was like a little red square on the Java
On a
map.
browser, it was weird. That was unusual.
Yeah.
Yes. You just
Well, you cheated if you're using Java applets.
Yeah, but this is when Java sucked and was barely.
Yeah, this was like probably the most.
was 95.
I think we even got some sort of recognition because it was the most advanced Java application on Java at the time, because it was so ridiculously hard. It was a really crappy technology at the time,
Well-
but this was done on it.
The thing is that if you downloaded the Java applet, we could transmit the vector data, not just a bitmap. And this is when everyone was on a modem.
Right.
So if somebody's on 28 kilobits modem, or trying to download a map image would take forever. Whereas if you had downloading the vector data so that locally rendered using the Java applet was relatively speaking super fast. That's what made it cool.
Smart.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, even like vector maps even Google Maps was using like raster maps a few years ago. Like, it seems like very ahead of its time.
Well, we were the
But I guess-
first. I believe the two of us were the first humans to see maps and door-to-door directions on the internet, which I think is pretty cool.
Very cool.
Yeah.
How Garmin came out? When did Garmin first launch?
Well, they weren't internet based, right? So you could. Actually, I don't think Garmin was even a player at this point. It was Navtech was the only place that we were. That's where we got the data from.
Yeah.
And they were building it for Hertz Neverlost, which came out a few years later. You know those things that no one uses in the GPS systems. Really, really bad technology, but the actual mapping data was amazing. And so we took that and applied it to the internet. We were 22 and 23 at the time. It had cost them $300 million to build this data, and they gave it to us for free with a simple contract saying, if you ever make any money on this, you got to come
share
to
it with
us.
them. Yeah.
And
Wow.
that's how we got it.
That's amazing.
That is amazing.
Yeah, so it's amazing what happens if you ask nicely. And there's also part of it was these guys had been working so hard on the tech, and no one had ever seen what they were doing.
Yeah.
Because it was not on the internet and it was not being used for Hertz, and so it was just they were excited that someone would use the data and people could see what they'd been working on.
So how did you guys get the engineering chops to pull this off? Because it sounds like you were so young, you didn't really have any help, and then you built this like cutting edge piece of technology. Did you teach yourselves, or
from I don't know what age, but you published your first
the like Blast Star game, right?
Yeah, when he was 12.
Did you write any other cool stuff back then?
Yeah, I wrote a bunch of games.
Yeah.
And then like occasionally like software for people that ask for software. You know.
You also work for a video game company.
Yeah. Finally, it was called.
Rocket Science.
Yeah.
That's funny.
By the way, we took a SpaceX tour yesterday. It was insane.
Thank you for that. That was amazing. Yeah, it was so good.
It's like Batman's lair in there. That's right. It's really cool.
Really is amazing.
But it gives you perspective on what Tesla's doing because the technology is so advanced, and there's interchange of information there. Like I know they used the Inconel fuse, right? Was from SpaceX when they couldn't get the power output, right? It kept burning up the fuse in the performance models. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool to see the SpaceX tech being applied to Tesla. I think there's one joint employee between SpaceX and Tesla, and it's the materials. Is it the materials engineer?
What about Elon?
Of course, Elon. In addition to Elon, because there's just not that many humans on the planet that know how to do this stuff.
No. Well, it sounded like back in the old days, was it just Elon doing the coding, or?
I mean, I did a little for like HTML front end coding, but it wasn't mine.
Not recently, but no, we had no money, so you couldn't employ him. So I just wrote all the software.
And you worked through the night, right? You just never. According to my book, you just never slept. I don't know.
I mean, we lived in a little office. I think this address was 470 Sherman Way in Palo Alto. It was probably.
It's about the size of this room here.
Yeah, it was probably like 15 feet wide by 30 feet long with a little closet in the back. And we would we couldn't afford a place to sleep or like a house, a home or apartment. So we would sleep in it, and it had a couch that was a futon, and we would pull out the futon, take turns sleeping on the futon or the floor. Although he coded a lot at night, so I usually got the futon at night. And we had to code it at night because the server, when the internet was live, needed to be functional, and we just had data for the Bay Area at the time, so we were just kind of making sure that the people in the Bay Area could use it. And then we had a little mini fridge with a cooking stove on it, and we'd cook simple things, like pasta sauce and pasta and things like that. That would be as cheap as dirt. People think it's expensive to eat real food. It's actually really cheap.
Yeah.
You cook vegetables, pasta, and
beans and stuff.
Beans, super cheap.
So we had that Jack in the Box
absolutely
lot.
the cheapest. And then we would go eat at Jack in the Box, which I still kind of shiver a little. And I haven't eaten there for probably 20 years or longer, maybe 22 years, and I can still probably recite the entire menu.
Yeah, we cycled through the menu at Jack in the Box because it was like it's a few blocks away from.
And it was open 24 hours.
Open 24 hours. Trying to get dinner in Palo Alto after 10 is very difficult.
Zero.
Yeah.
So did they know you very well at Jack in the Box?
Well, they didn't really.
No.
They did?
No. And I remember one time I got a milkshake, and I was so tired. It was like 4 in the morning, and just needed to get some sugar for the rest of the night. And there was something in it.
Oh no!
And I remember just flicking it out and just pretending it didn't exist and just kept drinking my milkshake.
Oh, that's horrible.
It was like that. We were that kind of like not in the zone to go back into Jack in the Box and argue about a milkshake, but I don't want to not drink the milkshake.
And part of the reason that food was like so cheap is that they had some people I think died of food poisoning.
Yes,
like
it was right around that time when they got into a food poisoning scare.
And so it was just very cheap to eat there. And I figured, like, they probably have taken some action because after the food poisoning.
Yeah,
so
they did.
hopefully,
that sounds.
it's just like.
But I still
eat a little bit of it. Does it taste funny? I need to stop eating if it tastes funny.
You run out of things to eat because after like the 17th chicken fajita pita, you're like,
Chicken fajita pita.
can't do it.
The teriyaki bowl. Yeah, remember that teriyaki bowl?
Was that one good?
It's actually, it varied, but it was edible. It was not bad.
Which one? What?
The teriyaki bowl.
Teriyaki bowl wasn't bad. There was this sort of sourdough grilled cheese thing that wasn't bad.
Yeah, I honestly didn't mind it. Really.
Those were the good old days, right?
I mean, it was honestly good days. I mean, we were just hoping that people would let us stay in the country. Yeah. We weren't really that worried about what we were eating. We were just doing everything we could to get someone to support the company. We didn't really I didn't understand the venture capital that much, so we were doing a seed round, an angel round, and doing our best to talk to everyone and anyone we could find. We had a very good friend with us, Greg Curry, who's now passed away, who was older than us by about 10 years, I think. And was a wonderful mentor, helped us out, and put a little money in as well. And then I did a lot of the work to just network with people. I think our first salesman who was selling Yellow Pages ads for us was a real estate agent who knew another person who knew this other person who helped us raise or put together. We ended up not doing the round, but put together a round of like $200,000 or something.
Yeah.
And then
we did like part of it or something. I don't know.
But I think once we had the Java map, which was really quite impressive. I mean, if you've never seen Google Maps or Yahoo Maps before, it really is a remarkable thing to see. We started to go to we got some audiences with some venture capitalists, and it just went from we were starving, we had no car, well, the car we had broken.
The wheel fell off.
Huh?
The wheel fell off.
The wheel fell off, yeah.
What kind of car was it?
I remember that.
It's an old BMW 3 Series.
Was it the one you
where
worked
we
on?
did a road trip across the country.
Yeah, the one that my mom has some pictures of.
I think there's still there's a carve in the road at Page Mill and El Camino.
Literally, the wheel came off.
Wheel fell off, and the guy
Literally in the intersection.
just drove it without the wheel to the side.
It's pretty much time for the junkyard at that point because the whole car is just falling apart. So, yeah, it's like the point at which the wheel falls off. It's time to go to the junkyard.
Kimball, the night before you met the venture capitalists, you and I were at Kinko's till 2 a.m.
No, that was way more stressful. That was way later because we already had the deal, but we were not. I don't know if you were, but I was not legally in America, so I was illegally there.
I was legally there, but I was meant to be doing student work.
Oh yeah, right.
I had a student work visa.
Yeah, you were doing you were supposed to be doing a PhD in Stanford and decided not to.
So it was like I was allowed to do work, sort of supporting whatever, I don't know.
Whereas I try to get a visa, but there's just no visa you can get to do a startup.
Yeah, fortunately nobody was paying you anything either.
And so we ended up getting we got a deal from Moore Davidow and this really well-respected VC firm, and we had to break the news to them that we took the bus to get to the offices. We don't have a car and we don't have an apartment and we're illegal.
No, you're illegal.
And so,
but I was legal, but my visa was going to run out in 2 years.
Okay. Yeah, but I was definitely
student visa.
We needed to get it sorted, and so they were great. I mean, the lead investor, his wife was from Canada. They knew the whole challenge of being an immigrant, and we had Canadian passports, and so they funded the company and they gave us some money to each buy a car, and they gave us a salary so we could rent an apartment, and I got a visa through the company. But the morning we were supposed to present to the partners, I went to Toronto because my mother was freaking out because she needed her computer fixed. And
What, really?
Seriously, this is brutal. So I flew out there planning to fly back on Sunday, and the meeting was on Monday. And I get to the airport on Sunday, and the border control they call me out. They're like, you're going down to work. You're not going down for travel. And I was like, no, I'm going down to work. I explained. Actually, no, I didn't. I said I'm not going to work because I think that's what I was supposed to say. But the lawyers told me not to say anything. And so they rejected me from the border. Oh. And so I'm supposed to do the presentation with Elon the next morning. And so a friend of mine came to pick me up at the airport and drove me across the border. And we went to the Buffalo border and just said, we're going to go see the David Letterman show.
That's hilarious.
And the border control guy was like, yeah, go ahead.
Wow. That's amazing.
I got on the late night flight from Buffalo to San Francisco, and we made the meeting in the morning. So
Very good.
Yeah, I mean, technically, you were not going down to work because that would have meant you were being paid something.
Yeah, I wasn't actually paid anything. Yeah. Technically, we weren't actually. No, you're right.
You're not actually breaking the law.
We're not breaking the law because we were not being paid anything. Exactly. Yeah. I should have told them that at the border control. But anyway, it was very frustrating.
Do you mean getting paid for something? No, I'm not doing that.
No, yeah, you're right. Exactly. We were not being paid. Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, so then they approved the deal that Monday, and we started building Zip2. And it wasn't a business model for back in those days.
Well, it was kind of like Yelp is like the business model was similar to sort of Yelp, but it was at a time when most businesses didn't know what the internet was, and most people didn't have an email address or
they
went online.
Explain to them what a website was. The internet was kind of this cool thing. People were using Netscape browser, and I think by the end of it, we got 18,000 businesses to be on our service, paying to be like with websites and everything.
Yeah.
A lot of the things that you can do today, like automatically build websites, we built a lot of those sort of tools to make it easier to build websites, and we had to sell door to door because that was the only way.
Did you hire people, or is it just you guys going door to door?
No, we had a team by that time because we could hire a team. But I remember talking to a Yellow Pages guy once, and it was amazing. It was the head of the Toronto Star that they owned all the Yellow Pages.
The Yellow Pages will never die. Famous last word.
Literally, because we went and talked to him to partner. We said we want to partner with you, and let's be one of your partners to put the Yellow Pages online. And he picked up the Yellow Pages, this book, this big thick book that's full of ads, this multi-billion-dollar revenue stream.
I mean, these guys were so arrogant and so like, we are kings of the world and Seriously. It will never end.
He picked up this book and he threw it at me. And he said, do you ever think you're going to replace this? And I was just literally like, I mean, my head is like, dude, you're already dead.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
Reminds me of the anti-Tesla people, Gas cars will never die.
That's right.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, we saw the growth of the internet. We saw the use of the Yellow Pages. We saw even all our competitors and stuff. And no one was using the paper Yellow Pages if you had the choice.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly.
No one.
Yes, that's very true.
And so at that point, very few people were on the internet. So it was really a question of is the internet going to succeed, which we were huge believers in, and these guys were not. They didn't even clue in.
Yeah, but it was like one foreign country after another. We would say like, listen, we'll just put your Yellow Pages online. It's going to cost very little. You'll still own all the content and everything. And they're like, they'll just throw us out of the office.
Yeah.
You're like, no, and how dare you even suggest this?
It was extraordinary, and it's been
we're like, okay, I guess we'll just build it, and then
But it's been interesting to watch over the years where, like in PayPal, the competitors were not banks, even though that should have been the competitor.
No, there were banks that tried to compete.
But wasn't it eBay mostly that was sort of the bank?
Well, eBay had something called Bull Point. But it wasn't exactly like PayPal.
Yeah.
But generally eBay had an issue with trying to get payment for stuff. Like two people would have to mail checks to each other.
Yeah, that's gonna work.
If you mail a check and you receive the check, and how do you know the check's real? Then you've got to, cash check and take, 2 to 5 days for the money to transfer. So it could take 2 weeks before somebody had confirmed payment, and then they would ship you the item, and so the transaction velocity was very low as a result. If you had instant payment, you could improve transaction velocity dramatically, like a factor of maybe 3 to 5.
Yeah, but I've just sort of seen that when an industry is disrupted, you worry about the major players. I mean, we remember when we started Tesla, we were aspiring to be the GM of the 21st century. 4 years later, GM went bankrupt. You're like, oh, okay, we don't need to be GM. We're good. And it's whoever is going to be the main competitors, we don't know yet, but it may not be the entrenched players. It may be not, sort of other companies. And so that happened at Zip2, where we tried our best to partner with the industry because that seemed like the best way to make some money and actually have a revenue model. And we ended up finding the newspapers to be a better partner because they didn't have the Yellow Pages business. And I think they were smarter. Their classifieds business was getting eaten away by Craigslist. Before Craigslist, classifieds was the bread and butter of the newspaper. And of course, anyone who used Craigslist would never use the newspaper. So it was those folks seemed to have a better, at least some of the players had a more vision of the future. And so our business became putting major newspapers, New York Times, to all of the Philadelphia Inquirer, Chicago Tribune, or whatever, all the main players, all the LA Times, everyone. And then we started going internationally, doing the same thing. So if you went on to the New York Times website and you wanted to search for a restaurant, of course they have all these reviews. Or if you wanted to search for a home, we tied the MLS together with maps and door-to-door directions. So all of these services that we now use and take for granted that use maps and door-to-door directions, we did that all in the 90s to find a business model.
Yeah.
What made you do PayPal after Zip2? Why didn't you go straight into sustainable energy?
Right. So, gotta recall things that are now quite a while. So it would have been 98 when Compaq offered to acquire Zip2, and which I think it was a good thing for them to acquire it because, as I mentioned, the newspapers actually, or the media companies, had too much control over Zip2. So they were not. We had great technology that was not being deployed effectively, and they would just generally be averse to anything that could remotely be competitive with their newspapers. So we're sort of trapped in this situation, but then Compaq came along and bought the company in late '98, and the deal closed early '99. So then, as a result of that, Kim and I had some capital, $20 million or something out of it, and I think the thing that was frustrating to me was that we'd built incredible technology, and it had not been used. It was just sort of it was very disappointing. We put a lot of work into this technology and it just wasn't being used. So I was like, okay, I want to do one more thing on the internet just to show that we can make technology that is, when it's used properly, can be extremely effective. So I thought about what's digital, essentially. What exists in the form of information, and is also not high bandwidth, because in '99 people still mostly had modems. So you couldn't, video was not really feasible in '99. So, but money is low bandwidth and digital, effectively, mostly digital. So it's what can we do to make money work better? And money, in my view, is essentially an information system for labor allocation. So it has no power in and of itself. It's like a database for for guiding people as to what they should do. And so you can think of banks as a set of heterogeneous databases with that are actually not very secure, and certainly the monetary system, the transfer system of checks is very insecure. Still is insecure. So are credit cards, and it's still mostly batch processing, and it was entirely batch processing that day. So it was not. So payments were, or money was this like heterogeneous, high latency, low security collection of databases. That's what banks are. And so just from an information theory standpoint, this should be something that can be much better if it can be real time, secure, and just very fast. Essentially, it's just one real-time database. So it's like, okay, let's try to build that. So that's what X.com was. And then at the time, I also thought what we should try to do is just do all the financial things as well, not just payments. I still think that's really what PayPal should have done, but whatever, it's water under the bridge at this point. And then there was a company that was formed around the same time called Confinity, which was Peter Thiel, Max Levchin, and Luke Nosek, David Sachs, Ken Howery, and a number of others. And at X.com, there's also like Jeremy Stoppelman, and who created Yelp, Roloff Botha, who then went on to run Sequoia and fund YouTube. Was at X.com. So we just had this like two companies with like a crazy amount of talent, X.com and Confinity. And Confinity started as a Palm Pilot cryptography company. Back when you'd communicate via the infrared port of a Palm Pilot.
I remember that. Yeah, I had one Palm Pilot.
So it was like, so you could basically communicate crypto tokens between Palm Pilots using the infrared port and then reconcile them on a PC. Now, obviously, they evolved to go in the payments direction as well. And we were both in Palo Alto, like literally a block away from each other. I think at one point we were briefly even in the same building. It was, So we were just competing with each other like maniacs, and then we had a coffee on University Avenue, and said, "Hey, why don't we just combine our efforts, or we're just going to bludgeon each other to death here?" So we merged Confinity and X.com, and raised $100 million in the space of 3 weeks in March of 2000.
Wow.
Yeah, and in April the market went into free fall.
Yeah. Oh.
So.
The 2000.
Yeah, it was like.
I remember that.
That was insane.
I know.
And we kind of thought it was going to go into free fall, but we're like, we better get this thing done fast, or we're both going to die. So. X.com was technically the acquirer of Confinity, but it was a 50.1 or 49.9 or something like that, and then there was a lot of drama. There was so much drama at X.com, and the company was called X.com for about a year, and then we changed the company name to the product name. The product was PayPal. But all the incorporation documents and everything is all my incorporation documents.
Who came up with the PayPal name?
I actually don't know.
People call you guys the PayPal Mafia now, Thiel wrote that in his book.
I don't know who did the PayPal. I was never a huge fan of PayPal as a name. The reason being that I thought it made sense for the company to kind of
Broader?
Be much broader. Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you limit yourself to payments, then necessarily people want to transfer money out of the system. And as soon as they transfer money out of the system, the efficiency of the database drops dramatically. because now you're in the traditional banking world. So if you just offer all the things that, if you just basically address all the reasons why people are taking money out of the PayPal system, so you have to provide them with checks so that you have a bridge to the legacy transaction system. You got to provide them with a debit card, provide them with the ability to get a loan and that kind of thing. But these are all ancillary to accelerating the velocity and accuracy and security of payments. Then if basically PayPal would be where all the money is. It would just suck all the money out of the banks, and the banks would go away.
Yeah.
So any plan you're gonna do with the X.com?
I wrote, if they just execute the business plan, the product plan I wrote in July 2000, let's just do that. But I talked to them several times, but they didn't do it.
So why did you and PayPal kind of part ways? What was really the drama that led to that, separation ultimately?
Well, things were very dicey in 2000.
Yeah.
Companies were dying like all over the place. So I was CEO of the combined company, and we're doing quite well from a growth standpoint. We were like adding 100,000 users a month type of thing, which back then was a lot.
Yeah.
But financially things were tough, and we needed to raise a financing round. We were also there were some technical questions around what code architecture would we go with. And then there was also a branding question. Like I said, I think we should not use PayPal as brand, because this is not consistent with being where all the money is. You want a centralized database. So I was kind of against the PayPal branding, and I wanted to do a bunch of things that seemed extremely risky. And I think those things would have worked out, but at a time when companies are dropping like flies, and I'm proposing that we do all these things that sound very risky, this is just much too scary for the rest of the team.
You seem to be attracted to crazy ideas that other people are like. I think the autopilot one is a great example where everyone's kind of trying the spatial approach to self-driving. They're doing Waymo for 10 years, nobody cares, and you come out and say, hey, we think vision is the way forward, and deep learning and vision, will take us all the way there. How do you find the courage inside to, people have to be coming up to you all the time and, thinking that you're an idiot or it's never going to happen, and how do you find that in yourself to go through all that resistance and still be confident in your thesis?
I try to be hyper rational, so it's not it's just like if the reasoning fits and you're not violating laws of physics or something, then that's the thing you should do. So and I guess the other day, if we lost all the money, I wouldn't, as long as we didn't lose other people's money, I guess I just lose my money, I don't mind. These things just don't seem that crazy to me. So, I think if PayPal had executed the plan that I wanted to execute on, I think it would probably be the most valuable company in the world.
Yeah.
It would be called X, but it would be the most valuable company in the world. On the other hand, now that's not all good though. On the other hand, then a lot of super talented people would have stayed. And because PayPal got acquired by eBay not long after, so there was the PayPal coup at the end of 2000. 18 months later, it was acquired by eBay. So, and then, if you think of the companies that came out of PayPal, the so-called PayPal mafia, YouTube, those Steve and Chad created YouTube. Jerry Stubman created Yelp. Peter created Palantir and a bunch of other things. David Sachs created his company, and Reid Hoffman created LinkedIn.
Wow. It's almost like all that market cap still exists, but now it's allocated on all these other tech companies instead of X.com.
Yeah. So in retrospect, I don't know. Sometimes like it's maybe a good thing that X wasn't or PayPal didn't achieve those things, because all these other companies would have at least been delayed or may not have existed.
There's definitely been kind of a resurgence in interest as we get into kind of cryptographic, money and Bitcoin and all that, of like interest in this idea, and it's interesting, like software hasn't eaten the banking industry yet. Software's eaten a lot of industries. There's some that it just hasn't, and banking's still there,
Stripe's eating them slowly, but they're doing a pretty good job. But the banks are in trouble if it's not Stripe, it'll be somebody else.
And you love code, but you don't seem to be as bullish on Bitcoin. Do you have could you break down like why? Because you're talking about this big database that's more secure for faster transactions. It seems like Bitcoin's hitting at least some of those.
I'm neither here nor there on Bitcoin. Yeah.
What did you think when you read like Satoshi's white paper for the first time? Were you like, oh, it's pretty interesting? Or
That was pretty clever. It's just like the things. Yeah. This always gets like the crypto people angry, but there are transactions that are not within the bounds of the law, and there are obviously many laws in different countries, and normally cash is used for these transactions, but in order for illegal transactions to occur, the cash must also be used for legal transactions. You need an illegal to legal bridge. That's where crypto comes in.
So is it kind of the dark net stuff?
It can't be entirely dark, because otherwise how do you buy normal stuff? And cash these days is used just much rarer. It's hard. It's like increasingly difficult to use cash. Some places you can't use cash at all.
Yeah.
So there's a forcing function for transactions that are illegal, quasi-legal, and in some cases legal. But it's got to have some. It's got to be both legal and illegal. It doesn't count otherwise. Otherwise, you simply it can't just be transactions within an illegal economy. Because how do you buy food in a house or something? You must have a legal to illegal bridge. So where I see crypto as effectively as a replacement for cash, but not as a replacement as a primary. I do not see crypto being the primary database. So now this is sometimes taken being like I'm being judgmental about crypto, and it's actually, I think there's a lot of things that are illegal that shouldn't be illegal. But so it's not as though I think that sometimes governments just have too many laws about that. They shouldn't have so many things that are illegal.
Didn't you say like on Mars there'd be less laws?
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Do you also propose a direct democracy on Mars?
I think probably that's the best. Probably it's the best thing.
Mars technocracy.
The Mars technocracy.
Yes.
And you want to make laws super short and simple, right?
Well, yeah. If people can't understand laws, then then what's usually going to happen is some special interest is going to bamboozle the public with long laws.
Yep.
And then the law is like reading this law is like the size of Lord of the Rings, but a very boring version of it.
Like the dealership thing is just crazy to me. Like America's supposed to be competitive, free market. It's weird, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, just so you want to keep the laws short and give them some kind of sunset period so that they don't just stay there forever. Otherwise, just accumulate over time and just eventually it'll be unwieldy. So the laws should have some time frame associated with them. They automatically go away. It's just keep the laws short to avoid trickery and sort of special interests that ultimately does not benefit the public. And then I think direct democracy is less susceptible to corruption than representative democracy. So, corruption just being like, to what degree is this action being taken that do not serve the interests of the population? Do not result in a net increase in population happiness as a whole. So that's why I think probably direct is better. And then just have things in real time. So if you want to vote on something, you can vote on it real fast. Probably make it. I would say make it easier to get rid of laws than to put them in, because these things tend to have a lot of inertia, and so have a bias towards having laws go away and not be there. So like maybe it takes 60% to put a law in place, but 40% to remove it, or something like that. Yeah. I mean, let's try it. See what happens.
The bills are extremely long that they pass. No one reads them.
Yeah.
Hardly anyone in Congress has read the bill, and even if they've read the bill, if you quiz them on the details, they wouldn't know it.
They'll find their page.
There's like, tell me what's this. There was no idea.
It seems kind of alarming that that's like the status quo and everyone just accepts it. But
yeah, these laws tend to be written by industry groups as well. So they'll write the law and then interact with the congressional staff but most of the work will be done by the industry groups, and so they're going to write laws that entrench their position.
It's typically like the people or the players buying the ref, like you were saying earlier.
Exactly.
It's that exact.
Right, so you get the regulatory capture of yeah. The players shouldn't be paying the ref salary type of thing. Well, the ref shouldn't be thinking, I'm going to retire and get paid by the players. So it's kind of amazing that it works as well as it does, given all these issues. So then PayPal, I ended up getting malaria anyway in 2001. 2001.
Yeah, tell us about this, the malaria thing.
That was you went on vacation, right?
Yeah, we went to South Africa with Kimball, actually.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And then came back and had like a near-death case of malaria.
Yeah, grew up in South Africa. We'd go to the bushveld all the time, to the what you guys call safari, and you just had a house in the bush. So you just go there every few weeks or so. I don't think we ever took malaria tablets.
We didn't have malaria in those days. I think there was a drought and then a flood and then suddenly there were mosquitoes.
Yeah, right. And so we were told to, and we did take malaria tablets. You took them as well, and when he got back, he was in Stanford and they couldn't figure out what was wrong with him. Our uncle, who's a doctor in South Africa, is like, he has malaria, and it's like, no, he doesn't have malaria. We checked. So, check again. Malaria kind of hides in the body, and then
that's why they wouldn't believe it.
So this was after PayPal got started?
Oh, this is 2001. So it was sort of after the PayPal coup. So I was on the PayPal board, and I was providing sort of product advice and whatnot. But in late December 2000, went on a trip to South Africa. Came back early January 2001, and I had a severe case of malaria. Almost died.
I sat next to his bed for about 5 days. It was yellow and tubes going in and out of him. Just sat early morning till late at night, just waiting to see. And then they said to me, get some pajamas for him. And the closest store was some like Dress for Less or something. So I just got him some pajamas, and then the next thing, after 5 days, he woke up and he says, so there's bunnies on my pajamas. I knew he was bitter. I think they were bunnies or ducks or something, because that was what I could get. And then I knew he was better.
You were sleeping. I mean, like it affected your brain that harshly.
No, it was bad. It was really bad.
Did that change your perspective? How did it like influence you after that?
I don't know. I don't think it changed me that much. Would you say?
I don't think it changed you.
No, I don't think it did.
Recovered and went back to
Yeah.
the world.
But how many times have you been on
I
vacation?
lost like 50 pounds, though. It was great.
Yeah.
So no more vacations, though.
Well, yeah, it took me like almost 6 months to get back to normal.
Wow.
So, and then in 2001, I was thinking about what to do next, and I thought there's like sustainable energy, like basically electric cars, solar, space, and then a friend of mine asked me, so what are you gonna do next? I said, well, so I would love to do something in space, but I didn't think there's anything that a private individual could do in space. But at least I'm going to go on the NASA website and find out when people are going to Mars. And I go on the NASA website, and it's nowhere to be found. And so I was like, well, this is pretty weird. And then I discovered that it was actually a NASA policy not to talk about it.
Really?
Yeah, at the time.
Why was that, do you think?
What I was told is that when George Bush the First when he was elected, he said he asked NASA to put together a plan to send people to Mars in 90 days. They came back with a plan, and it was $500 billion. And it says, well, this is like political suicide. So then after that, talk of manned missions to Mars were banned. That's what I told. Yeah. So anyway, so it's like, well, maybe there's something that can be done here to get the public excited about going to Mars. And if I get the public excited, then they will vote NASA to have more funding. And so the original idea for SpaceX was just to have a philanthropic mission to Mars.
Yeah, actually, it started as a graphic of a pot plant. Just need to get the pot plant to Mars. It was like an inspiration.
Sure.
Just as a way to prove to the world that it could be done.
Yeah. So the mission was called Mars Oasis. It was seeds and dehydrated nutrient gel that would hydrate upon landing. You get this great picture of green plants on a red background. Be like the first sort of life as we know it on Mars, and you can also learn a lot about what does it take to keep plants alive and have a little miniature greenhouse on surface of Mars. So that's what I initially pursued as like a way to basically increase NASA's budget. It wasn't let's create a space company. It was how do we get NASA's budget increased so we can go send people to Mars. And I was trying to figure out how to get this thing launched, and the rockets, the European and US rockets, were too expensive, and I couldn't afford them. So I went to Russia to try to buy some ICBMs in 2001, literally. They kept raising the price on me, and it was been quite difficult. And I said, I could afford to pay $9 million for an ICBM, but not 20, because I figured we need to do 2 of these missions, because odds are good that one would fail, and then it could have a negative impact potentially. So that was pretty weird, being in Moscow trying to buy ICBMs in 2001.
That's amazing.
How do you negotiate to buy an ICBM?
Yeah, I call up the military and say, well, they got to get they got to get rid of these things anyway because of the arms reduction treaties. So it's like, if you're going to throw it away, I'll take it off your hands. They have to. It was like SS-18 Dnepr. It was the biggest nuclear missile in the Russian fleet, and but anyway, they're going to decommission these things. So why not just sell me them instead? and then every time I talk to them, the price would go up, and I'm like, this is not good. Because so even if once we do a deal, we're probably going to get shafted afterwards too. And this is the pre-deal shafting. It's like, it's what's going to be after, or it's after I've given the money, then it's not going to be good. So, and then I started looking into it as like, why rockets cost so much, and so there's nothing fundamental about why they should cost so much. If you add up the materials and say, it's not like the raw materials cost that much. You really just need to figure out a smart way to get the materials in that shape. And then we need to make rockets reusable. So, like any form of transport, if it's not reusable, it's extremely expensive. If cars were single use, and you need a round trip, if you bought a car for $20,000, then your round trip will cost you $40,000.
That's true.
Well, it's crazy. So the same thing is true for aircraft and boats and rockets and everything. So the rockets were expensive even as expendable things, but then they were also not reusable. So there's no way we're going to have a city on Mars unless we can have reusable, low-cost, reliable rockets. That's fundamentally the issue. So I came to the conclusion that even if this Mars Oasis mission was successful, it would still not result in it would not materially further the goal of being a multi-planet species, because the rocket technology was not good enough, and it was not getting better. In fact, it was arguably getting worse. So the real thing that needed to be solved here is reusable rocketry and lowering the cost of access to space. And that's like, okay, well, I'm going to try to do that. So then I got SpaceX started in early 2002, basically. I was living in Palo Alto at the time, but most of the engineering expertise was in Southern California. So that's why I moved to LA.
Did you ever have any, like, even inkling of imagination that you could be doing, a dozen launches a year and being contracted with NASA? Is that even like...
I thought that was very... I thought we had, 10% chance of success or something like that.
You ended up being chief engineer, right?
Yeah.
Because no one wanted to give up their secure jobs with ULA and something at the beginning.
Exactly. I actually tried to hire... Basically, there'd been a number of attempts at doing a sort of a private rocket company or commercial rocket company, and they're all failed effectively. And that's to the degree that it was like a joke in the aerospace industry. Like, how do you make a large fortune in the rocket? Start with a... How do you make a small fortune in the rocket industry? Start with a large one. Pretty soon it's going to be small.
Business.
Yeah, they told me that joke so many times. I would just jump to the punchline, it was very hard to recruit people because I had not built any physical hardware before. And I kept being called internet guy. For the longest time, for ages. Finally, for the first 10 years, they were calling me internet guy, or basically internet entrepreneur / fool. He's trying to start a rocket company. What an idiot. That was generally how it went. So it was quite hard to recruit people, and especially if somebody's got like a secure job at Boeing or Lockheed or something like that. Then trying to recruit them to be, chief engineer of a startup rocket company was hopeless. So basically, nobody who was good was willing to join, and there was no point in hiring somebody who wasn't good. So I ended up being chief engineer, which is, So the first 3 launches failed, and probably if I'd been better, then we would have gotten to orbit sooner. So it took me a while to learn all these things. So
From books or?
books and talking to people.
Did you go to Utah and talk to anybody, like at ATK Orbital?
Oh yeah, I visited ATK. Yeah. Orbital is Dallas, Virginia. Yeah. So yeah, I visited ATK, visited Orbital. And Orbital had a success with the solid rocket based Pegasus, but they'd also gotten like an 8 launch deal from DARPA. So like, okay, if you're starting off with basically an 8 launch deal from DARPA, that's a good situation. We did not have a launch deal from anyone. And Pegasus is there's some clever engineering with Pegasus, but fundamentally, I think launching rockets from planes is not sensible.
Yeah.
It sounds like it would be a good idea, but it's not. And then even Orbital went away from doing that with as soon as you get past a certain size, they went to ground launch.
Yeah, I was reading somewhere that ATK, Morton Thiekal, they were doing snowcats, they were doing ski lifts, and they sold that to the man who made the DeLorean.
Really?
Yeah. I just read that in their Wikipedia. I'm like, oh, that's fascinating when I come around.
So, yeah. Right, so we got SpaceX going. And that was very difficult. We got the Falcon 1 rocket built. It was very simple. It's the simplest orbital rocket that's liquid fueled, so that it had the potential for reusability, for useful reusability. And then we had 3 failures. Finally got to orbit at the end of 2008. So
That was incredible. Going down to Kwajalein and watching.
Yeah, you wrote it like a blog for a while.
Yeah, I actually still have it up there. It's it's an old blogging platform that Google still keeps alive. It's called quajrockets.blogspot.com.
I think it's going to get a lot of traffic soon.
Yeah, totally. Send it. Check it out. It's all there. It's photos of. There was one photo of Elon picking up a satellite. We launched the rocket and the rocket exploded, which was very, very, very sad. Everyone's super sad. People were like pouring their heart and soul into the rocket. And the satellite was, I think, a U.S. Navy or
Air Force Academy.
Air Force Academy, and it was thrown out of the rocket and fell through the roof of the hangar. This is like where you really think. Hangar, exactly. It's like a stand-up tent
and small tool shed.
Yeah,
Wasn't supposed to do that.
Like the size, maybe the size of this room. The rocket it had. This is the first launch failure, so it had there's a cracked aluminum B nut on that cracked during liftoff and created there was an engine fire. This wouldn't have been the end of the world, but there was one of the helium lines was steel mesh overwrapped with a Kevlar sleeve, and it melted the sleeve. And so we lost pressure, pneumatic pressure, which caused the engine valves to close. So about 30 seconds after liftoff, the engine shut itself off due to the engine fire, and then it went ballistic and basically smashed in the rocks just a couple hundred feet offshore, and when it was quite a big explosion actually. In that explosion, the satellite, which was in a fairing, went through the fairing on a ballistic arc back onto the island, smashed through the tool shed roof and onto the floor in a pretty reasonable condition. Like it wasn't totally gnarled.
Reuse it?
So we gave them back their satellite. So like, we didn't lose your satellite. It may need some repair. But it was so improbable that the satellite would come back. We had a couple more failures after that. Yeah, 2008 was a particularly difficult year because we had the third failure in 2008. The Tesla financing round collapsed.
Oh, it was such a nightmare.
And I got divorced, and it was just
I think 2008 was
Bad year.
really, really bad.
yeah,
It was a bad year.
yeah. I don't think anyone could. I think 2018.
I think 2018 was worse.
What's up with 8?
Well, with the Model 3 ramp, right?
Oh, there were so many things that happened in 2018.
So much drama, it's insane.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Sorry, so we're in 2002 starting SpaceX. Moved down to LA. And it was pretty fun in the beginning. Like generally, startups are pretty fun in the beginning, and then you go through the, chasm of doom.
Chasm of doom.
Yeah,
Trough of sorrow.
trough of sorrow. Exactly. It's rough.
Despair.
Yeah, it's usually always like everyone's like super optimistic and excited for first year or so, and then things start to go awry, and there's usually many years of grief before this finally day dawns. So it's like 2002, and then about so in 2003 is when Rosen and JB Strawell called me up and said, "Hey, we want to have lunch." I want to say Harold Rosen. I think that's his name. But he weirdly had he was a pioneer in space technology and electric vehicles, which is odd crossover. And he'd done something called Rosen Motors, which is like sort of an electric vehicle company, and but he'd also been a pioneer in geostationary satellites. So he called me up and said, "Hey, let's have lunch." So we had like lunch at like Smith and Wollensky or something in El Segundo, where SpaceX started, and so Strawell and Rosen were talking about space stuff, and then started talking about electric cars, and I said, "Oh yeah, so I was going to be working on electric car technology at Stanford," and then JB said, we should take a drive in the T0 from AC Propulsion, and I was like, yeah, because the timing is like lithium-ion batteries was really like the critical breakthrough needed for compelling electric cars, and so I was like, okay, I'll go try out their T0, which had specs similar to what we eventually brought to market as Tesla Roadster. So then, so I got a ride in the T0, and then I tried to convince Al Cacconi and Tom Gage to commercialize the T0. Now the T0, and there's like lots of stuff online about it. It didn't have doors or a roof, so like clearly you need to add those things, or any safety systems, and it was very unreliable because it was just like sort of a proof of concept basically.
I heard it was basically like hand assembled. You guys really had trouble scaling it.
No, it literally didn't have doors or a roof, or any airbags, or an effective cooling system for the battery, and it was not safe, and it was very unreliable. It would break down. It needed to be babied by an engineer, or you couldn't use it. So, but nonetheless, it did get like 0 to 60. I think under 4 seconds, 250-mile range.
It was enough to convince you that it was possible.
I mean, I knew it was possible because if you go from energy density of lead acid to lithium ion, you've got about a 4x energy density improvement. So if you've got say a 60-mile range with lead acid, you're going to have about a 250-mile range with lithium ion with the same weight. But it was cool to see it in action with AC propulsion. And I tried hard to convince those guys. Like I really pestered them a lot to go to commercialize the T0, and they just did not want to do it. Weirdly, the thing they wanted to make was an electric Scion. And I'm like, you guys, nobody's gonna pay $70,000 for an electric Scion, okay? That was their idea, $70,000 for an electric Scion. I'm like, this is not gonna work, okay? You will sell like 14 of these things, you know. And I'm like, I kid you not, I have like the email trails and these. Yeah, I mean, I think they're still around. So, in fact, but I even say, listen, even though I think this is the dumbest idea ever, I will fund 1/10 of it. If you can find 9 other people. And then I think the only other person they could find who would do it was Sergey Brin. So it's like, okay, Sergey and I are the only ones willing to do this, I think. And so they didn't actually get it off the ground. And I said, it's going to fail. But at least it's something. And so then eventually I said, kind of like, listen, if you guys are not going to commercialize the T0, do you mind if I do it? And they're like, no, yeah, that'll be totally fine. Like, okay. So then it's like, okay, so I'm go do this with JV, and we'll go create a commercial version of the T0. And then Gage and Cocconi said, well, you know, there's some other people who also want to do it. Do you want to maybe team up with them? He said there were 2 other groups that wanted to do it. And I was like, okay, sure, you know, maybe this is a way that I can have my cake and eat it too, you know. I think that's the last word.
Never works out.
God damn, try to have your cake and eat it too, doesn't it?
This one's going to be easy.
No, I mean, well, I didn't think it would be easy, but it was like, I thought maybe I can allocate like 20 to 30 hours a week and just work on product engineering, and then other people can do the other stuff. But I don't even like doing the other stuff anyway. So that didn't work out. So then Tom Gage said, he said there were 2 teams, but I only ever met one, and that was Eberhard, Topping, and Wright. But like the thing that is really bugs me about them is like they Eberhard in particular, the worst guy I've ever worked with, and I want to make a note of this. He is literally the worst person I've ever worked with, and I've worked with some real douchebags. Okay, to be number 1 takes a lot. It's not easy. His version of the story is like is that out of the blue he pitched me on funding his electric car company, and he convinced me to do it. Totally false. Okay, I was like, I'm creating an electric car company. It's like the Gage said, well, maybe you could team up. And it's like, okay, well, maybe that might be worth doing, and so the company ended up being basically 5 people. This is Wright, Topping, Eberhard, Straubel, and myself, and so it was the 5 of us. And like Topping always tries to write right out of the history books, because they had a huge battle and they made me choose which one was going to be CEO. It's Wright or Eberhard, and I talked to JB and I was like, which one? Because I really did not want to be CEO. So then they're like, okay, well, both have issues, but maybe Wright has bigger issues than Topping. That's what JB said. So maybe, lesser of evils. I was like, okay, fine. I got to make a choice here, because the 2 of them they refused to be in the same building. So I was like, a lot of drama. Tesla has so much drama, and I was like, okay, you know, it's not like I said, like, you know, lesser of two evils. So it's like I said, you're right. Sorry, you know, not that I didn't think he had good points, but if I got to pick one, I was trying not to be CEO. I got to make this rocket company work. So anyway, so then made you know, it was like right, you know, it's like I had to leave then. Anyway, so we got basically we jammed AC propulsion, powertrain, and battery pack into a Lotus Elise. With the first prototyping, like really just jammed it in, you know, and in retrospect, this was not a good idea, because the car ended up weighing like 60% more than an Elise or on that order, and we didn't have enough volume to put the battery pack, and we had to we invalidated all of the crash tests because the weight distribution was different. It was heavier, so none of the crash tests were valid anymore. We had to redo the airbags. The air conditioner ran off a belt fan, so we didn't have a belt fan, so we had to have a new air conditioning system. So we had to change the HVAC system, and so basically in the end, only about like I think 6 or 7% of the parts ended up being in common with an Elise. Wow. So, and we went through a lot of trouble trying to shoehorn everything in there. And I mean, it's a cute car, but it's 10% too small. It's like, and then the costs ended up being crazy. Yeah, and then there was an audit of the costs of the production cost of the Roadster by one of the investors that joined in 2007, and then they called me up and said, hey, the numbers that Martin is telling you, that everyone's telling you about the Roadster are totally false.
Oh boy.
And I was like, what do you mean? Like, he says, no, we just did an audit. It's more than twice of what he's saying.
Yikes.
Yeah. It's like we would have to sell this car for $250,000 in order to not lose money. I was like, this is insane.
Oh.
So anyway, then we obviously had to fire Everhard. There was no choice about that. Yeah, and then it turned out not only had he misled me directly, but he'd instructed others to also lie. No. Yes. When I say like somebody that's like the worst person I ever worked with, yeah. It was pretty bad. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, but SpaceX also hadn't gotten to orbit at that time, so I was like, man. So then I asked, what is his name? Harris. Remember the guy? I'm blanking on the name.
No, we brought in a CEO.
It was interim.
Yeah, he ran like a manufacturing company. I mean, he seemed pretty smart. The problem that I found with Tesla was we were a startup in Silicon Valley, building a car that was really manufacturing and materials engineering, and it's really like all the talent was for, you would think there was probably talent, you know, in Detroit or Japan. But if you took any of those guys in to run Tesla, they would run it like a car company, and then it would be destroyed.
Well, I had no idea. You can take somebody who's running a giant corporation. You just could not take someone
from a massive company culture and have them do a startup, and yet you couldn't find anyone in Silicon Valley who knew enough about making cars. And so we kind of found a middle of the road one he was an expert in manufacturing. Flextronics, that's right.
Ex-CEO of Flextronics was an investor, and he agreed to just join as interim CEO, and this is 2007.
Yeah. But I mean, Tesla was a company you tried so hard not to be CEO of.
Yes, but the thing is, this is misinterpreted. If I say that it's misinterpreted as like I somehow don't love Tesla, which I do, it's just like trying not to go insane with work.
Yeah, being CEO of a real startup is 80 hours a week. Being CEO of two is 160 hours a week, and there's only 169 hours or something of sleep of 168 hours a week. So, like, you just can't physically do it.
Yeah, I mean, the pain level is extreme. So that's, yeah. Anyway, I tried quite hard not to be CEO, but had to be. No choice. That or Tesla would die. So that, yeah. Everhard was fired in July 2007, and he was at the time we didn't know he'd instructed other people to lie, so we thought he was just, it wasn't as bad. But once he left the building, then it turned out no, he'd actually orchestrated a massive deception, which is quite bad. Yeah. He also said he came up with the name of Tesla Motors, which is false. That was created by a guy in '95, and moreover, he knows this because we went to great length. We had to buy the trademark.
Yeah, exactly.
So he can come up with the name. It was trademarked in '95. So it's like there's a whole bullshit backstory of it. But the guy, we almost had to change the name of the company because the guy who owned Tesla Motors wouldn't communicate with us, and so eventually we sent the nicest guy in the company, who's weirdly Martin's best friend, which I don't understand, but Mark Topping, super nice guy.
I like Mark a lot, actually.
Yeah, you can't not like Mark. It's impossible. He's a super nice guy. So we sent Mark to go sit on the guy's doorstep and not leave until he until he agreed to at least negotiate with us or something. He talked to us, and then we ended up buying the trademark for $75,000.
Good deal.
Yeah.
Was he the one who owned the domain too?
No, that was a whole different nightmare. But the domain guy, that took us 10 years to buy that Tesla.com domain. Man, and he is, I think, still like a networking engineer at Juniper. So, yeah, and that cost us like $10 million.
That was
crazy.
Like, the guy just held out.
Was he just sitting on the domain, or was he using it for something?
It was impossible to. No, he wasn't using it for anything.
Just holding the name.
It's like Twitter handle Falcon Heavy isn't being used. We're fighting for that one.
Yeah, so man, took us ages to buy the Tesla.com domain. But we were gonna have to change the name to be something else. And actually, the lead candidate was Faraday as the name, because Faraday invented the electric motor, and then Tesla perfected the electric motor with the AC induction motor. So if we couldn't do Tesla, we would do Faraday. And then, ironically, a competitor was later created called Faraday.
Faraday, yes. A startup from China, right?
Yeah. So...
did you guys have a Faraday logo or anything? Were you that far down the
track?
No.
We didn't really even have a Tesla logo until later, because there's nothing to sell or anything. So, but in the end, the Tesla logo and the Tesla font was done by me working with basically a little firm. That's why the Tesla and SpaceX, there's some similarities between the fonts, and that's because it was done by the same people. I spent a lot of time on the Tesla and SpaceX fonts. Get the little things.
That's cool.
You want to eat now?
Yeah, sure.
Excellent.
I think it's all in the kitchen.
All right.
Awesome.
It would be much easier if the world was flat, or if you're in a flat situation. As soon as things are not flat, and you've got the world is like, it has undulations and curves, and then the car can be at any kind of angle, and then if you accelerate or brake, it's actually going to tip a little bit.
Yeah,
you've got sort of pitch and yaw compensation. That's where it gets really tricky.
Yeah, I mean, they're doing just amazing work. It literally just blows my mind every time, like, there's an update. Like, you think it's like, wow, I can't believe it's this good. And then it just gets better.
Like the big one was the faster lane changes. Like as you push the turn signal, it's like immediately. It's really awesome.
That's so satisfying.
Yeah,
And,
love
you know,
that.
I was kind of just like before, I was like, okay, it's not that good, but it feels good because like I can't believe a computer's doing this. Then we got the faster ones, and I was like, oh my god, it was so bad before. Like, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, it'll be able to just do crazy maneuvers, like a high-speed chase, technically, because it's you don't always want to bias the thing to be conservative in the actions that it takes.
Yeah.
But there's quite a significant foundational rewrite in the Tesla Autopilot system that's almost complete. As
Really?
well, yeah.
And what part of the system? Like perception, like planning, or just like?
It's instead of having planning, perception, image recognition all be separate, they're being combined. Yeah.
I don't even understand what that means.
Effectively, like the sort of neural net is absorbing more and more of the problem.
Right.
Beyond simply if you see an image, is this a car or not, or what, you know? It's kind of what do you do from that? 3D labeling is the next big thing, where the car can go through a scene with 8 cameras and kind of paint a path, and then you can label the path in 3D. This is probably 2 or 3 order of magnitude improvement in labeling efficiency and labeling accuracy. You know, 2 or 3 orders of improvement in labeling efficiency and significant improvement in labeling accuracy, as opposed to having to label individual frames from 8 cameras at 36 frames a second. You just drive through the scene, rebuild that scene as a 3D thing with. It's like there might be 1,000 frames that were used to create that scene, and then you can label them all at once.
Is that related to the dojo thing you mentioned at the Autonomy Day?
No, dojo is for learning, for training the neural net. That's like when you're trying to build the neural net that you ship into the car, dojo speeds that up by hardware accelerating it.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you guys, is that up and running yet, or?
No, it might be. We might have the first one at the end of this year. But next year, I think it's very likely next year, maybe this year. But it's essentially meant to absorb massive amounts of video input, and then train against vast amounts of data, so that it can be used in the inference engine in the car. It's just like a human, really. It's like how long does it take you to learn a subject versus do a subject? You know, it's like hard to learn, say, calculus. But once you learned it, then you can, you know, integrate something fast or something. You know, it's like it's really the same basic thing.
Yeah, I mean, that'll just really tighten the feedback loop. Like, at some point, it just gets impossible to catch you guys. And, like, the rest of the people haven't even really, like, started, the rest of the auto industry. And, like, the feedback loop is just getting so tight with autopilot now. It's just, like, makes it a lot easier.
I think it will. They will catch up eventually. Or at least they will catch up to where Tesla is now. I don't know. I mean, things like for example, we're talking about maps and directions, and how today, like, computer-based navigation is considered trivial. But you know, back in '95, it was not trivial.
Right. Yeah.
It was considered very hard, and the compute power you had was tiny. So the code had to be super tight. Couldn't have fluffy code. If you trying to execute something on like a 386, like very, very puny amount of memory and compute. So now but now maps and directions are easy. I think at some point in the future, it might be a decade or something, then autonomy will seem easy.
Yeah. I mean, it'll obviously be commoditized in the long term.
Yes. It will seem easy in 10 years. But there will be a long stretch there where there'll be vast differences between cars. Well, and I have the auto industry is used to slow rates of improvement. So, there's still not really a car yet that matches the original Model S. Maybe you could argue like take
2012.
Maybe.
Yeah.
If you look at like the EPA ratings, it literally is just all below.
Yeah. So that was 2012, and it's 2020. So it's still like pretty hard to get a car. Let's say there's not a car available at the price of the Model S that has the capabilities of the Model S of 2012.
It's kind of exactly what you were talking about with the Elise, where you're like, oh, we'll just put a battery in the Elise, and that kind of showed you like, okay, we really need a ground-up electric design. Yeah. And the rest of the industry hasn't done that.
The sort of founding principles of Tesla were basically completely wrong. So the premise going in is like, it's not going to be that hard. We'll just take the Lotus Elise, it's a nice lightweight car, and we'll take AC Propulsion's drive unit technology, and we'll put them together, and we'll have an electric car, and it'll be great. It sounds pretty easy.
Yeah.
Except the AC Propulsion technology could not be industrialized. Like, it was like basically handcrafted electronics with an analog motor controller.
Yeah.
And so depending if it was hot or cold, your car would respond differently or not at all. And the motors were hand wound. It was just like, it was like impossible. You cannot scale this technology. You could have like finicky, individually made, super expensive prototypes, but we ended up using none of the AC propulsion technology. So, it's something that looks cool and works well at an individual prototype level does not necessarily scale. And then like I said, it was like maybe 7% of the parts of the original Roadster were in common with the Lotus Elise. It would have been way easier if we started from a blank slate. It would have been a better car. But I think like the real test of any given startup is how well does it respond to adversity and adapt and just figure it out. So like most things are just, when they start out, they don't make a lot of sense. But then as long as you adapt quickly, then you can make the company work. If you say like sort of Confinity, doing Palmpot tokens with an infrared port made no sense, but they adapted quickly to online payments. That was key. At X.com was originally going to bite off way more than it could chew by trying to do all the banking services, and then also focused on payments. It's like, if we do all these banking things, we're going to need a banking license. The banking license is going to slow us down. We're just focused on payments. We can just get a payment, license from the state, and it's just like $50 or something. You can be a money transmitter, literally. And so you just got to adapt quickly.
You kind of need to be naive, though. If you had known as much about manufacturing, you might not have done it.
Yeah. It would have been difficult to. I guess if you know the outcome's going to be good in the end, sure. It sort of depends on how much foreknowledge do you have about it. Manufacturing is insanely difficult. It's underappreciated in its difficulty.
Yeah, no, that's totally true.
Yeah. Even making the Roadster, which we only like peak made about 600 Roadsters in a year. But call it like 10 a week or something like that. 10 or 12 a week. So you know, if 2 got made in a day, that was a big day. And you know, Tesla's making over 1,000 cars a day now.
What I find amazing is from start to finish, a car is made in 48 hours.
Yeah, depending on what counts, start to finish.
Yeah, it depends. But you can see the rolled aluminum in one section of the factory, and you can see the cars coming out the other end, and it really is astounding. And
yeah.
Cars have been built for a long time, but this is just astounding. It's still, when you don't appreciate when you're driving a car how much goes into the level of detail, the 10,000 parts that come together, the shaping of everything.
10,000 unique parts.
Unique parts.
Wow.
I mean, the pack alone is several thousand cells.
And it all comes together with people that are skilled, but skills are changing as things become a little bit. There's more autonomy, but it's not. Autonomy is not perfect. So you do need to have a lot of people there, and these cars have to be perfect. I mean, it's just.
Given how much complexity there is in a car, it's remarkable that they cost as little as they do. There's so much that's in a car.
So what sort of processes did you remove, like, you know, first principles type approach from the Elise to like the Model S? Like, was it a massive jump there?
Yeah, I mean, it's gigantic.
Yeah.
Tesla had never made a car, made a full car before. Lotus made the non-powertrain portion of the Roadster, and then Tesla built the battery pack, motor, power electronics, charger, and then put it all together at the end. And the final assembly was actually at an old Ford dealership in Menlo Park. That was, you can see some of the stuff in Revenge of the Electric Car.
Yeah, I've seen
Great movie.
Yeah, it's great.
It just gives you crazy perspective to look back on it.
Crazy.
We need a third one.
Yeah, I mean, the idea of having a car assembly tiny plant in Menlo Park of all places, and that was just because we managed to sublease the Ford dealership closed down, and we managed to get it like this deal from Stanford, because the Stanford was going to redevelop it, and we figured they'd probably take way longer than they expected to redevelop it. So we said, well, you're not bringing it to anyone. Like, can we pay you like 50 cents a square foot, and you can kick us out whenever you want? And it was this actually huge dealership, and it had enough room to do final assembly of the cars. So we just did final assembly of the cars there.
Oh, amazing!
Yeah, in one of the most absurd places to build cars on Earth is Menlo Park.
So no test track or anything, just the road outside or something.
Yeah. Well, we'd actually, the early Roadsters were very unreliable, so we'd generally put about 50 miles of just normal driving.
Oh,
so just drive around the Bay Area with somebody following you.
You must have got some crazy looks from people, right? It's like, what is that?
Yeah. But we'd put 50 miles in each one of those cars because they just have a lot of things that would break down in the first 50 miles. And then battery production was in San Carlos. Yeah. So, man, there's just a lot of detail and all that. But going from the Roadster to Model S was a massive leap, because the Model S is quite a sophisticated sedan where Tesla built the whole thing as opposed to just building the powertrain. And so competing against like Mercedes, BMW, Audi type thing. So that was a massive leap of difficulty. We did get the NUMMI plant, but really that just meant we got $8.
Yeah.
Because they stripped the plant of all the good equipment. The only equipment that Toyota and GM left behind was the stuff that they could not use anywhere else.
Wow. So
they only left the most junky, broken pieces of equipment behind. We managed to use some of it, but yeah, in the paint shop. I mean, some of the things were literally not even worth the scrap value. so it was like not worth it to call the scrap metal dealer.
What'd you do with it then?
We made it. We made a lot of those things work.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, plastic injection molding machines, and we just made them work.
Wow.
And the paint robots, we mostly made those work. The assembly, the body production line had to be made new because there was just nothing. So we made the body production line for Model S was created from scratch. Yeah, and it worked out, but it was very difficult. It was also in the beginning, the top suppliers would not work with us, or we would get like their D team, because like who wants, if they got all these customers, like they got the big car companies, they got like Toyota, or they got Audi, BMW, Ford as customers, and a startup who. Now you're in the supplier's position. Which team are you going to assign to this startup that everyone says is going bankrupt? You're going to assign the interns and rejects. Okay, it's not going to be your top team.
We have the same thing with our
Your top
Twitter.
team's going to go to like Toyota. Your big customers, the top team. So we would get the worst team usually at the supplier company if the supplier would even work with us.
You think that influenced you to vertically integrate more?
It was vertically integrate or die.
Makes sense.
Yeah. We tried outsourcing. The battery production originally was going to be made at this place that made, I think, barbecue grills in Thailand.
I read that story.
Yeah, and I was like, man, they have no idea how to make a battery. And I was like, this is crazy. We're moving it to back to our headquarters in St. Carlos. And we're just going to make it here. Because basically, once there's a massive amount of work going from a prototype to production, and so you need a fast feedback loop with engineering. And if that feedback loop is all the way out in Thailand, it's just no way. It's not like if you have an existing production line that you already know how to make it in volume, that you can move, but you cannot create a production line that never existed that's super far away from where the engineers are. It's a recipe for disaster. And also the cells were coming from Japan. So they go from Japan, they go to Thailand, they go through customs, they'd be waiting, and then they'd be going to a battery pack. Then that battery pack would be sent to England. Then Lotus. These are all things that got changed. But the supply chain, like let's say there'd been a problem with the cells, you'd only if the supply chain was so long that you'd only find out that it didn't work 5 months later.
Yikes.
Yeah, and then you have 5 months of scrap inventory. So this is a recipe for a disaster. So that got moved to St. Carlos. Cells shipped directly to St. Carlos. Put it in a module. Figure out why the module's not working. Fix it. Put it into a pack. Like the original reason why the Roadster battery pack had, I think it was like 16 sort of blades, was if one of them didn't work, you could pull it out and put another one in. Because that happened. So you don't really need modules in my view. You should just go from cells to pack at this point. But it was a very difficult thing going from Roadster to Model S.
The fact that like the Model 3 still has modules is kind of vestigial.
It's vestigial, yeah. Because the modules in the Model 3 are not actually interchangeable, so there's no point in having modules really. We should just have a pack.
Was that done to just save cost then, or some other reason?
It started off because it's not a sensible reason. The reason that there were cells, modules, and pack goes back to the early Roadster days, where we'd make a module. That module would have problems, and so then you could swap out a module. It's like a server rack. The idea was like, if you have a bunch of servers in a server room and one of the servers flakes out, you can just pull it out and put another one in. So without having to replace, so you could replace a small fraction of the pack instead of the whole pack. Then that concept just carried forward into Model S, X, and 3, but without the original logic no longer exists because the modules are not interchangeable. Yeah. You can't just swap out a module. But these things just have a lot of inertia. So we really want to move to no such thing as a module. There's just cells and pack. Yeah.
Yeah, because initially they had the battery swap facility right at Harris Range.
Yes.
And then the Model 3, I don't think it had that capability that you could actually swap the whole pack out quickly, right? Or I don't know if that was...
It does not.
Yeah, right.
S and X still have the ability to do a fast pack swap.
Right.
But things essentially evolved in the same direction that phones evolved. For a long time, phones had swappable battery packs, and now basically almost nobody makes a phone with a swappable battery pack.
Definitely.
As soon as the range gets past a certain point, then
I agree.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. But this was far from clear at the time of designing the Model S. So we went to a lot of trouble to make the S and X pack capable of a fast swap with quick disconnects and bolts coming in only from the bottom and that kind of thing. And then we did that demo. We just swapped out 2 packs faster than you could fill a gas tank.
That's amazing.
It's kind of ridiculous to me, like taking the battery out of your car just in, Harris Ranch, and they put a new battery in and you come back. It was kind of like, it's good that supercharging got a lot better.
Yeah, it was just way better to increase the range of the pack and have faster charging. But this debate, which seems obvious in retrospect, was not obvious at the time.
Definitely.
Back then, I think at least a lot of phones had swappable packs. Because remember, this would have been designed in, we had the first prototype out in 2010 for the Model S. So back in 2010, let's say the thought process going into this in 2009 would have been, at a time when, I don't know, maybe most phones had swappable packs or something like that, The iPhone was like 2007 or something, iPhone 1. So then it didn't make sense. But companies have a lot of momentum. So the S and X pack is still a swappable pack.
Yeah.
It's like it was like too much trouble to change the design. And Model 3 still has modules, even though it shouldn't have modules. And some degree, like what you'll see in any given product is that the errors in the structure of an organization will manifest themselves in the product. So, that's where we have a module team, so we have modules. Like, wait a second, just combine the module team with the pack team, and then there won't be modules. So generally, the errors in the organization manifest themselves in the product. You can see where the organizational boundaries are, and then you'll often get like a box in a box. It's like, wait, why does this thing have 2 boxes? Well, because this team wanted to have an enclosure, and this team wanted to have an enclosure. And so they have an enclosure on an enclosure. And this is still the case with it's like, what a silly thing, but that's actually the case with the Model 3. Model 3 battery pack has a top enclosure, and the car also has an underbody.
Yep.
What's the point of that? That doesn't make any sense. Because the pack team wanted to have an enclosed battery pack, and the body team wanted to have an enclosed body. Yeah, it makes sense. But you don't need 2.
Oh.
So, yeah.
Awesome.
So this is all this, and putting the top cover on the battery pack is a big pain in the neck. So it adds mass and cost and stuff. So that should definitely go away in the future. Lots of brackets on brackets, that kind of thing.
So you survived the production hell of the Model 3, which was pretty intense. I mean,
that was like stupendously difficult. And I mean, I think it's sort of Tesla. I don't know if this is accurate or not, but I think it might be accurate. Is the first car company to reach volume production, I think in 80 or 90 years or something like that in the US.
That's wow.
Yeah,
and it's a harder time to do it for sure.
Yeah. The complexity of like what people the regulatory requirements and the minimum expectations for a car at this point are dramatically more than they were 80 or 90 years ago.
And the place you chose to do it too.
Yeah. So it was a super difficult one. I mean, there's lots of car company startups, but doing the prototype is the easy part. Building the production system is 100 times harder.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's where you see the things fail. Like, there've been over the course of the last century probably thousands of car company startups, most of which people have never heard about. Occasionally you'll hear about something like a DeLorean or a Tucker. Most of them there's not even a footnote, and it's because of the difficulty of production. And here's a real important point that is not well appreciated. This is a point that should be advanced by short sellers, but I've not seen it. I've not seen it articulated, but it should be. The incumbent car companies make most of their money from selling spare parts to their existing fleet at high margins, and they'll sell the new cars either at de facto zero margin or even at a loss. It's kind of like printers and cartridges or razors and blades. You sell the razor at a loss, sell the blades at a profit, sell the printer at a loss, sell a cartridge at a profit, or video game consoles. The actual cost of, say, an Xbox is $600, but you can buy it for $300 or $400 because they make it up in the games that are board. Yeah. So this now. So if you're a new company, you do not have a fleet. So you have no fleet with which to subsidize the sale of your new cars. This is the primary reason there has not been a successful car company startup in the United States. This is the primary reason. Because the incumbent car companies have 80% of their fleet outside of warranty or something like that. Maybe it's 70%, but approximately. Like if a car lasts for, say, 20 years or something like that, and the warranty is for 4 years, then it's 80% out of warranty. So even if they stopped selling new cars, they would still, the profit would increase. So,
according to Edmunds, dealerships make 20% of their revenue, but 50% of their profits on service.
Yeah, exactly. So, and the car companies themselves will often make more than 100% of their profit on selling spare parts.
Wow.
Yeah. So if at the point at which they're making, say, 110% of the profit from selling spare parts, it means that they're actually selling the new cars at a loss. So this is the very difficult thing to overcome. In order to overcome it, a car has to be significantly more compelling than other vehicles, such that people are willing to pay a premium, and that you can actually be positive cash flow, aspirationally profitable, selling new cars, not simply selling spare parts to the fleet. For Tesla's fleet is probably 10% of Tesla's fleet, or something less than 20% is out of warranty, whereas 80% of the other car makers is out of warranty. So this makes it very difficult. Also, electric cars need much less servicing, so that's another difficult thing. So this is the main. This should be the main argument advanced, I think, for why a new car company cannot be successful. The main one. And so, yeah. Then, like I said, in order for that car company to have any chance, it must be compelling enough that people will pay a premium. Otherwise, there's no chance. And I think there's actually, in order for a car company to be successful, it has to succeed on two fundamental technology discontinuities. One being electrification, and the other one being autonomy. I think not even pure electrification by itself is not enough. So you can, but like since the moving production line, there've been two major technology step changes, being electrification and autonomy, and the combination of those two is that's the only opening for a new car company to make it.
Yeah. Makes sense. I mean, without autonomy, you'd probably have to wait for EVs to reach price parity. With autonomy, you can drive many more miles and bridge that gap easier.
And it's like, well, Tesla's moat in some ways, or not moat, I guess, but like Tesla's advantage in many ways is bigger because like these are two such different technologies that are happening at once that you've been working on while nobody else has. So it's like that much harder to replicate now that it's been accomplished almost.
It's very hard for any new car company to enter the market, they have to make a very compelling product. Meaning they have to have some significant technology advancements in the electric drivetrain and the battery pack, and just generally with the car itself. And then the autonomy has to be very compelling. Autonomy in and of itself is enormous. So both of those things a company must be successful in doing, or they will end up in the cemetery. So that's the real challenge of it. Yeah.
Well, even with like the software updates, that's something that no other manufacturer can really even get right. They can't do it over the air. You have to take your car into, because it doesn't work, right? So that's a core component of providing updates. Instead of getting your revenue now from the dealership and spare parts and stuff, you can actually send software as a service. We actually did a whole podcast on this.
Well, our goal is to minimize service costs.
Yeah.
Whereas the other car companies, I wouldn't say the goal is to maximize service costs, but it's certainly not to minimize it.
Well, car companies also have two different businesses. There's the dealerships, where their business is actually just service, I don't think it's anyone's surprise that people don't like going to their dealer. It's like it's because their incentives are actually not aligned with the customer's incentives. Their goal is to bring you back as often as possible.
Yeah, the dealerships' incentives are also misaligned with the car companies during the warranty period, because the car company has to pay for the warranty, the service during warranty. So it's they have a conflict of economic conflict of interests. The car companies cover the warranty costs, but the dealership makes profit on the servicing. So they want to maximize servicing even during the warranty period.
Yeah, it's almost like the economic factors you just mentioned have created like complacency where there is no innovation because, nobody can just start a car company.
Yeah.
Right?
It's like Schumpeter's creative destruction. There's like innovation tends to come from new entrants to an industry. So if an industry has formed an oligopoly or something like that, then the forcing function is weak for innovation, because innovation tends to come from new entrants. Yeah, so this is the problem with rockets. There's not a lot of new entrants, so innovation forcing function is weak.
But it's encouraging to see a rocket booster land.
Yeah.
And everyone is all like, wow, we can innovate maybe.
Yeah, it's actually been surprising how little innovation there's been and despite SpaceX showing reusable rockets, landing and reflying these rockets many times, and we're like, come on, just copy it or something.
Same with Tesla. Tech works. Just do the same thing.
Didn't Chinese space companies started putting grid fins on their rockets?
I think there's some Chinese rockets that have launched with grid fins. Well, you can really use any kind of fin. Grid fins just are more predictable across a wide range of speeds. So from hypersonic through supersonic, transonic, subsonic, it's quite easy to predict the behavior of a grid fin, and the center of pressure of a grid fin doesn't change that much. Whereas if you have a fin like a wing-looking thing, that you'll see quite a big change in where the center of pressure is across a wide Mach regime. Yeah, either one would work. The shuttle didn't have grid fins.
What do you think about Rocket Lab's approach of trying to use a helicopter to recover the first stage?
I think that's going to be harder than it seems.
Yeah, I think so.
But their booster is quite small. So the issue with helicopters is you run into a max load problem. Like the lifting capability of helicopters is not that great, and that lifting capability drops with altitude. And then the range of a helicopter is also not that great. So then you end up having to have the helicopter on a ship, and then if in heavy weather conditions you can't take off so that you have to be your weather constraints at the launch point and the catch point are end up limiting your launch availability. And then you got to. It's dangerous. You've got somebody in a helicopter with a pilot trying to catch this thing coming out of the sky. It
doesn't sound too sane.
There's certainly the potential for something to go wrong. Whereas if you have a drone ship, there's if it smashes into the drone ship, it's not a big deal. If it smashes into a helicopter, that's a big deal.
Sure.
Yeah. So, overall, I've been, that said, I've been pretty impressed with Rocket Lab, and they're making a go of it, and they're going to do reusability, which is important. It's fundamental.
Do you guys still see yourself doing that city to city travel in 30 minutes one day?
That would be awesome.
I want to do It's more Starship.
Yeah, I think that can, for sure, can be done. Yeah, for sure, can be done. It is loud. It's really a noise is the biggest concern there. Both taking off and landing. When it comes in for landing, that sonic boom is loud. It's like, there's actually two sonic booms. So it sounds like somebody just discharged a double-barrel shotgun in your backyard. So it's not like it's breaking windows or anything, but it's like it's be pretty annoying if it's happening on a regular basis. That's basically what it amounts to. So then you have to do it offshore. So I think we'll do, but can it be done? Definitely. And it's the fastest way to get anywhere based on known physics. So, and I think the economics can be made to work as well, so that it would be competitive with international air travel.
It'd be exciting.
Wow. That's cheap? Wow. I can't wait for that. I travel a lot, like to Asia, like minimum like 12 hours to 14 hours.
Sure.
Yeah.
Will you try to keep most of the launches around the equator, or would it matter? Like,
it doesn't matter a ton. It matters if you're going east to, if you launch east, you have the advantage of the Earth's rotation. The closer you are to the equator, the more you can take advantage of Earth rotation. If you fly west, you're actually counteracting Earth's rotation, so the delta velocity that you need is higher. But you can go in either direction. I think one of our upcoming launches is actually a retrograde flight. So it's going to go against the Earth's rotation.
that'll be fun to watch.
Yeah.
But if Starship is going to launch so many times a day, how are you going to produce all these Raptors? Because we've been touring the SpaceX factory in Hawthorne, and you're making them by hand, right? Are you going to automate any of this?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's being made by hand. Being assembled by hand, maybe, but
Yeah, that's what I mean. Sorry.
we have a lot of metal printers. We have a whole
That's
Those
incredible.
3D printers are crazy.
3D metal printing. Wow.
Yeah,
Love it.
I mean, I think SpaceX is pushing the envelope with metal printing more than anyone else. At least that's what the splatters tell us. But we also have a foundry. So
cool.
we do casting of exotic parts for a Raptor. We have a lot of CNC machines. It's a very complicated engine to build. Merlin looks like a toy relative to Raptor. It's very simple. But we're going to make a lot of Raptors and Starships.
So are they all going to be made in the States then?
Yes,
Okay, they'd have to be. But
they have to be.
yeah.
Yeah, we can get simple ingredients from outside the U.S., but other than that, we're not allowed to transmit any sort of
NASA IP.
Yeah, NASA. Yeah.
no. It's like anything that like is a sophisticated element of a rocket engine, we're not allowed to transfer out the U.S. or rockety stuff is the weapons technology.
So just a Starship, when it's assembled, will fly there and come back.
So
Technically, there's a lot of rockets at the bottom of the ocean before we can push out. And they have.
This is true.
So if your city-to-city rocket travel works, does that mean Tesla doesn't need to build an electric airplane?
Man, building an electric airplane has a lot of difficulty associated with that.
Or what about the VTOL jet?
There's a lot of difficulty associated with that. I gotta make well, it takes a massive amount of effort to do any one of these things. So you can't do them all. It's not possible. Say, oh, how you allocate the resources? What's the best thing to do? Making a VTOL jet can definitely be done. Doing electric aircraft for sure. I mean, all transport will go electric except for rockets. Yeah, everything.
I guess why it seems exciting is because if Tesla's leading in energy density and battery technology, then the logical next step is like, if somebody's going to build an electric airplane, it's the company with the best, lightest, most efficient batteries, right?
Yeah, it's hard to, it's an entirely different regulatory regime. There aren't any car companies that are also aircraft companies. So why don't they just make aircraft?
Yeah, actually, it's kind of funny. There was like some conspiracy theories on Twitter because on Instagram, Tesla's category, it said automotive, and then somehow aircrafts and boats got added.
Yeah. Boats?
Like at the Cybertruck event, they changed it or
They're
something?
more Cybertruck.
They're making a
changed.
boat or an airplane.
This is like your Wikipedia.
I think it's incredibly hard to bring an aircraft to production and meet all of the regulatory requirements worldwide. It's a very difficult thing. So it's not like it's something that could just be done. We would have to not do a bunch of other things. It's not like there's like a ton of unallocated resources at Tesla and like, oh, what should we do now? It's like a constant resource starvation. So then it's like, why don't you do this other thing? Okay, well, we're starving for resources. Then what will you not do?
Well, it seems like that's what's so exciting is now that the business has kind of taken this next step, the resource like starve is kind of changing or hopefully slowly changing.
I mean, an airplane, like maybe another car or something. It's not.
Yeah, not necessarily in airplanes, but I'm just in general. It seems like the financial health means you can spend more on R&D, you can invest more. Like
that's not how it works. It's not like if you just had more money, you could spend it effectively in R&D. But if there was a factory producing excellent engineers, that would be true. Where is this factory? It doesn't exist. So it's incredibly difficult to find the right talent, integrate them into an organization, and have it work effectively. It's not a money thing. It's just hard to find. There's just a small number of people,
More engineers?
Especially, there's just a fundamental limitation on exceptional engineers. There's just not that many.
So given like these constraints and all the things you have to do, could you tell us like a little bit about your thinking on how you prioritize?
And the prioritizing has usually been out of desperation, not choice. It's not like, oh, let's sit back and how should we spend these resources? This damn thing isn't going to work. If we don't make it work, we're going to go bankrupt. So, and then so we better make it work. The Model 3 program, there were so many mistakes that were made with the Model 3 program that the entire company had to be devoted to fixing the Model 3 production system. So, we took everyone off solar, almost everyone off battery pack, power pack, and that kind of thing. Anyone who was working on, Roadster, Semi, everyone stop doing that, work on Model 3 or there won't be any Tesla.
Yeah. It's kind of amazing. You really bet the whole company to get to this next level, but, I have a Model 3. I couldn't afford a Model S, so, I'm very thankful that you guys decided to bet the whole company.
There was no choice. It's like either you got to get to volume. It's a chicken and egg situation. You can't make the car at an affordable price unless you have high volume. Unless you have high volume, you can't get an affordable price. So now what do?
Yeah.
How do you bootstrap this thing? You basically just got to take a giant flying leap at high volume and hope you get to you grab a cliff ledge with your fingertips.
Yeah, it seems like
it's like that Indiana Jones where you're like running down the thing, and here's what it actually feels like. It's like that, what Temple of Doom, whatever, where it's like there's a damn boulder chasing you down. Okay,
Arrows shooting.
And it's a big hole in the ground.
Can you make that game?
And you're gonna jump across the hole in the ground, and if you slow down, the boulder's gonna crush you. This is what it feels like. It's not like, I wonder what we shall do. It's like boulder, hole in the ground, and then jump across or you're gonna die. So that's basically, get the situation. Like at this point, maybe we could say like, okay, what shall we do at this point? The biggest problem we have to solve right now is just having production on each continent, because it's insane to be making cars in California, shipping them to Europe and Asia. This is, I mean, as it is, making cars in the Bay Area is pretty absurd. And then you also got to ship those cars half around the world. So you got all this finished goods inventory on the water that's very high capital carrying cost. And you can finance part of it, but not all of it. But you got the transport costs, you got tariffs, you got, every time a car gets loaded or unloaded, there's some potential for damage. It's not zero, so it just creates a lot of cost, and then it's hard to manage. And the factory complexity in California is amplified because you've got several different regulatory regimes. So you're building, it seems like you're building Model 3, but you're actually building several versions of a Model 3 depending upon whether it's going to China, Japan, Australia, Europe. Then you got goddamn right-hand drive. Okay. It's like every now everything's gonna go over here. Because of some random bureaucratic decision 100 years ago. Right-hand drive, left-hand drive. This is a mega pain in the ass.
Put it in the middle.
Yeah, absolutely. And all these different languages, you can't have like warning labels in English if they don't speak English. It's like, I don't know what it means. So there's stickers all over the place for 17 different languages or whatever it is, and that's all in one factory. So the complexity amplifies the difficulty of manufacturing, and then you kind of get into the cycle where in the first month in the quarter, or let's say first 6 weeks in the quarter, you build cars for Europe and Asia, and you get them on the boats. And then for the next, say, 3 weeks, you build cars for the East Coast of the US, or North America. And then the final 3 weeks, you build cars for the West Coast. So the deliveries early in the quarter look very, very low, and they spike exponentially at the end, because basically all the cars arrive at the customers at the end of the quarter. And then we're like, then we'll have these conversations. We've got to get out of this wave. And they're like, well, they'll punish us very badly if we get out of the wave because the financials will look horrible.
Yeah.
So then we end up, okay, we'll do the wave again. And so now we've got a factory in Shanghai that'll go a long way towards alleviating the complexity and the cost. We'll have far fewer goods that we need to finance that are on boats. Once we get the factory going in Berlin, or Brandenburg technically, which is close to Berlin, then this massively reduces the complexity of production and reduces the fundamental cost of the vehicle. So this will really de-stress the company a lot.
So local production will break the wave.
Local production will break the wave. I mean, just like we've had the number of times that headlights have come up as an issue is crazy. We've had to ship cars to Europe many times where the supplier of the headlights for the EU headlights couldn't match rate, or made them wrong or something, and then so we have to make cars with US headlights, ship them to Europe, then ship a bunch of EU headlights to Europe, change them in the port because they're not allowed to exit the port until they have the EU headlight.
Oh my God.
So that was the port problems we would see.
That's one of the many port problems.
Wow.
So I like first quarter last year was a tragedy of errors. It's not a comedy, but a tragedy. And Belgium went on strike. Right, and you're like, what do you mean Belgium's on strike? I'm like, yeah, a lot of cars were coming into Zeebrugge, and we're like, okay, now what do we do? Nothing. Just cars are stuck because okay. But then they're scheduled to go off strike on this other day, and like, okay, so then we can move things. Great. Anyway, it was just so many things. And cars got stuck in the port of Shanghai because they had the wrong sticker.
Oh my God.
Yeah, they put the wrong sticker.
Did the sticker man get
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I know. It's like, it's better off like just made it in China. And
Absolutely,
sell it to
for
China.
sure.
Like
Totally agree.
you don't have to spend like 2 weeks, 3 weeks on the ocean, go there and wrong sticker. And you have to wait and replace.
People don't appreciate Giga Shanghai yet completely.
Not until recently.
Not yet.
Not yet. I don't think people have realized it.
Not fully.
It's
but
extremely important.
yeah.
Yeah. And these like shipping times are like technically it's possible if everything goes right, you can get the car there in 2 weeks, but the ships don't leave every single day.
Exactly.
And then you also have to queue. You can't just instantly load the cars. So the cars, you have to like send like 2,000 cars to a lot in like, Port Oakland or Port of San Francisco, accumulate the cars, then they get moved to another place, then they get loaded onto the ship one at a time.
Oh my God.
And then finally the ship leaves, and then like sometimes the ship has problems.
Yes.
And like there's storms or something.
Storm and custom.
No, like it's
You
not
have
like
to go through every single.
it's so much drama. Then there's ship,
too many ways to go wrong. Like,
so, yeah, and then like the ship's engine broke down, so it's like it's stuck somewhere. and yeah,
but it's great. Like right now, like everything roll off the production line, go directly to the delivery center.
It's great.
It's wonderful. So I have another question. It's like, from your perspective, how do Chinese public perceive EV?
Well, China is very pro EV, and it's the biggest EV market in the world. I think it's like half of all the EVs are made and bought in China.
Yeah,
something like that.
Right now, yeah.
Yeah. So China sort of subsidies for EVs have dropped considerably, so that did cause a reduction.
Helps a lot. Yeah.
Well, the EV incentives were very high in China, and now they're much less. They're like a third of what they used to be, or less.
Yes.
So that's caused some decline in demand, as one would expect. But China is still the biggest market for EVs in the world, so I think they're very positively received.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
So talking about the incentives, because I know the price, there was a small price reduction, right, in the Chinese Model 3, but then the subsidies were the balance, so it's actually not. It's not any impact on Tesla in the profit, right?
No, I don't think so. Well, I think obviously depending on what percentage of the car is made in China, the parts that are made in China are not subject to a tariff, so that's certainly helpful. We also save on logistics, and generally we found that locally sourced parts in China cost less than in the US or Europe. So this is all pretty helpful. Also, the Tesla got added to the purchase tax exemption, which all the other. This is. I'm not sure if people realize just how much of an uphill battle Tesla has had to sell cars in China. It's been really, we had basically no access to any of the subsidies, and we paid a tariff, and we had to ship the cars over, and every single thing was set against Tesla, and still we made progress and did decently well. So I think that it will be a much better situation with local production, not having to do shipping and tariffs, and being able to have lower cost local sourcing of components. So it make a big difference, I think.
Is that your victory dance when you broke ground in China?
Yeah, that was great.
It's a big deal.
Yeah, it is a big
Huge.
Just in terms of just fundamental economics, it kind of makes sense that making cars on the continent where they are bought will be a lot more efficient than making them in California and shipping them around the world. Yeah.
And you can get paid for the cars before paying your suppliers, which seems to not be the case if you're shipping around the world.
Right.
And that could be a huge friction on the whole kind of cash flow situation, or it has been.
For sure, it will sure make a big difference on cash flow because, it's there's just no way to get the cars, especially to Europe, but even to China, to get them to customers, before we have to pay suppliers. So if you're a rapidly growing company, it's night and day if you get paid by your customers before you have to pay your suppliers, like night and day, because then the faster you grow, the better your cash position is. Mm-hmm. But if it's the other way around, where you have to pay your suppliers before you get paid by customers, then the faster you grow, the faster your cash position drops.
Yes, because you're going to spend more money to make more cars.
So growth actually causes you to auger into the ground in a situation like that. Now at Tesla, we had a mixture of both things, where we had a lot of customers in California, and that's fast. For sure, we would get paid by customers faster than we would have to pay suppliers. But then for cars going to Europe and Asia, it's the other way around, So we would have to pay suppliers before we got paid by customers. And now we could offset some of that with the asset-backed line, which was pretty helpful, but only some of it, not all of it. So the fundamental financial health for sure improves dramatically by just having a factory on the continent. Okay, we're not talking next door, but it's just how many oceans. Especially Europe was logistically super hard because we're on the West Coast. If we're on the East Coast, then China would be much harder. But if you're on the West Coast, Europe's much harder because you've got to go through the Panama Canal, or even worse, around Tierra del Fuego. Because sometimes the Panama Canal get backed up, and you're like, this friggin' ship is going to the Antarctic. Okay. It's like you just go up to the and it's stormy as hell. So you got to send a ship around Chile? Are you kidding? In the middle of crazy storms, and then back up all the way, and then it is so funny. Oh my god. So logistic nightmare. It'd be great to just have it not get on a boat and cross the Pacific and Atlantic and that kind of thing.
So maybe similar to Vincent's question, Ale, what's the biggest advantage in choosing Berlin compared to other European countries?
Berlin has the best nightclubs.
That's true. Have you been?
I went to Bergheim once.
Really?
Yeah.
Holy shit. That's cool.
Yeah, so several years ago. Well, I don't know. I mean, we looked at a lot of different locations, and I think sort of, I don't know. We could have put it in a lot of locations. We needed to move quickly, and actually this place, it's like whatever, 30 minutes to the outskirts of Berlin, technically in Brandenburg. It actually was a location that BMW was going to put a plant there. So a ton of the environmental work and all of the permits and stuff had already been done, and then for some reason BMW chose a different location. But there's like, I guess, something on the order of a year's worth of environmental, paperwork and stuff that's been done on that location for an auto plant.
Awesome.
So that's it made it one of the quickest places to get going. And generally, like the government, local and state government was very supportive. So, I went there and it's like, okay, this seems like some pretty good vibes. This place, so there's a lovely part of this lovely place, and there's an opportunity for, like, it's close enough to Berlin that, say, young people could still, live in an apartment in Berlin and commute to the factory. It's right. There's a train station. They're actually going to move the train station. It's a small train station, but they're going to move the train station to where you can literally get off the train and be right at the Giga Berlin.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. That's perfect.
You could literally just pop right off, and you just walk.
Wow.
You don't need a bicycle. So then it's like, okay, this is pretty cool. And so young people could be in Berlin, in Parliament, and still can work at Giga Berlin. But if you want to have more of a family situation, a backyard, there's affordable housing available with houses with yards and stuff that aren't too expensive. So it seems like a good combination of factors. A lot of talent in the area. So it sounds cool to Giga Berlin. It does sound like some cool nightclub, I think. You could definitely have a cool nightclub that was called that. People are like, yeah, that sounds good. Giga Shanghai too. It sounds pretty cool. Pretty
We
fun.
should party in Giga Shanghai.
Yeah, we should have like a rave cave in the.
There's a lot of space around the factory side.
Yeah.
Well, you should have like your own nightclub.
Yeah. I think that would be who doesn't know. Who doesn't want? We should do that. I feel like I'd go for sure work at a company that's got the nightclub. That sounds way more fun.
Didn't you want to put a roller coaster into the Fremont factory?
Yeah.
You still going to do that?
I mean, I think that would be pretty fun to do. Yeah. I think we could just like do just basically have like, we just needed a rail that can support like a modified Teslas, and then
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Can you imagine a plaid?
Yeah, just like zip around and
Around the factory in like 5 seconds.
Tours would be booked for months.
Yeah, we should get in right now. Awesome.
yeah, we kind of actually in various parts of the factory we have vehicle conveyance systems. They just don't move that fast, but they're kind of like roller coasters that
You
move
can
slowly.
speed them up.
Yeah, you can speed them up. Exactly. So yeah, but yeah, overall I'm feeling pretty. I don't want to tempt fate or anything, but feeling pretty good about where things are headed. I think there's just like a lot of good things. Model Y coming out this year, and some exciting announcements about batteries. A lot of progress in autopilot. Yeah. And so Berlin, Giga Berlin, and then making progress on some of the new vehicle developments. And the solar glass roof, getting that rolled out.
The Cybertruck got received really well, I think.
Yeah.
Did you expect that many orders?
Not really.
It's amazing.
It's amazing. when I first saw the Cybertruck in Franz's design studio, I mean, Elon had told me that this was a daring design. Although I think you're the most excited about this design than any design.
Yeah, I think it's our best product ever.
Yeah, and I saw it. I was just taken aback, and not by the design so much, by the pure aggression that the truck. You stand in front of it, and you're like, okay, I'm afraid. It really is like a badass truck.
Yeah.
Well, it seems like a lot of reasons why people buy pickup trucks, in the US is like because it's like the most badass truck, like which one's the toughest truck, and it's like what's tougher than a truck? A tank. Like a tank from the future. So it's like
my niece in Cochrane, which is near Calgary, she's a dirt bike truck rider champion, and already 5 Cybertrucks were ordered just the day.
5 Cybertrucks.
Because they shoot.
Just in case the first 4 are busy.
Yeah, 5 of her friends ordered.
She's done her.
And she's also put it already.
Yeah, absolutely.
They just love it.
Yeah, it's literally like, so how do you out-tough a truck? You just make a futuristic armored personnel carrier, and that's tougher than a truck.
And I feel like autonomy will probably be very like mature by the time it ships too.
For sure.
So how many Cybertruck orders do we have right here?
Raise your hand.
I got one.
We all have Cybertruck orders.
2.
I ordered 3.
I mean, it's going to be pretty special and not look like other things, so, yeah.
It looks so cool. Like the first time I showed it to my son, it's like, Daddy, this is something from Alien. This is his first impression.
Yeah.
It's like, yes, it is.
That's how it was designed. It's like, what's the, let's make a futuristic armored personnel carrier, and so the inspiration board was like literally like Blade Runner, like sort of Mad Max, Back to the Future, Aliens. They've like so that's why it looks like that.
like the pre-order number is amazing.
Well, it's got to be over like 400,000 now, right?
I think way more.
mean,
I think it was just so risky, and it just like at first people were like, even people who like were hardcore fans were like, oh, what is that? When it first rolled out, and then people are like, you know what?
Wait a minute, like,
this is kind of amazing. I want this.
You could see it like there was like in person. You could see it happening really fast.
it's
like
growing.
The reaction and then the processing, and then you're seeing all the features, and then the range and the price. Those are the compelling things that really like just hit everybody.
Yeah,
really.
the 40,000 was the biggest shocker.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, people are going to be buying
and
this.
that range too.
Yeah.
Like it's just
No, actually,
it
the
was beyond.
69,500 miles with 2.9 seconds. Like, come on, like, dude, you have to get it. Like, no way.
Yeah.
It's
Well, and Sid
amazing.
Mead loved it too, right?
He did actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the last things he said actually.
That's, yeah.
Did he have a drive in it?
And no, he saw pictures of it, but I think he was not. Obviously, he died recently, so he didn't. He saw pictures and he said, "Yeah, that's great." And he said, "Send us a note, like he loves it."
That's wonderful.
Yeah. So, but you want to have these things that inspire people. It feels different, not like everything else is like the same. It's like variations on the same theme. You want to have something different. But you say like how many? I wasn't sure if nobody would buy it or a lot of people would buy it. It just wasn't. Didn't. I don't know. But I just told team like, listen, if nobody wants to buy this, we can always make one that looks like the other trucks. That's not like
Yeah.
Yeah, you can always just try it and
we could say like, okay, it was a. We could say, okay, it was a weird failure, but now we'll make one that looks just like the others, and there you go. So
It seems to have captured the whole world though, like elevated Tesla in the cultural zeitgeist in a way that like is so exciting. Like the Travis Scott music video already happened. Like that was so
cool.
I was
That was
waiting
cool.
for the first music video, and I was
free
like,
advertising, right?
yeah, so
Yeah.
awesome.
Really cool.
yeah, it's going to be hard to make that, by the way. So it's not. It's because it's a different architecture. It's an exoskeleton architecture, so there isn't any cars out there that have an exoskeleton architecture. So you got to rethink how all the internals of the car are done, so that you can use the external shell as a load-bearing structure instead of just basically thin sheet metal that is effectively just there for aerodynamic reasons. So you could take the external what's called A-class surfaces off most cars and still drive around it'd lose almost no structural value. They usually go very, very thin sheet metal, so it's all endoskeleton. So there'll be some challenges building that.
It's a Starships 3. It's a Starships, yeah.
So you can use the same steel as the ship.
Yeah, I'd love one of those limited quantity ones.
Oh, I know.
Sure,
Like
sweet.
Tim had shouted out.
Yeah,
about,
Tim had asked about that. Everyday astronaut.
Yeah,
He's a cool guy.
he is a cool guy. He really knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, he does.
So yeah, so there's a lot of a lot of good things. There'll undoubtedly be some setbacks along the way, but it's looking pretty good.
Should we do some closing thoughts?
You know, I just remember when I got my Model 3, it was like a difficult time in my life, and it made it easier. And, you know, you don't have to buy gas, car drives you around. It just makes your life better. All of our lives in these little ways, like all this struggle you do, it really makes things better and just makes you hopeful and inspired. And, you know, I just can't thank you and the whole Tesla team and enough for all the love you put into the car. You know, and every day it's just happy because I have a Model 3.
That's cool. I'm glad you like it. That's our goal. Our goal is to, you know, maximize make people like really touch people's heart, you know, with the product. And it's like I think like too many of these companies out there that design these things with just sort of a spreadsheet and sort of marketing surveys and that kind of thing, without saying, "Do you love it?" You know,
do you
do
love
you
the
actually
product?
like the product that you're making? Do you
It
love
touched my heart very much.
Right.
I'd like to thank you for this chance, like doing interview with all of us. And as a shareholder and Model 3 owner, I remember like one time you tweet about your money is first in and will be last out.
Yeah.
I was really touched to see that tweet. I think it's like years ago.
Sure.
Like right after one of the shareholder meeting. I was like which CEO would do this, you know? And like after I bought my Model 3, I more believed to the company. Like I ordered a Model Y and then 2 Cybertruck. I was like, I'm a Porsche fans before, and then right now like
He was going to get a Taycan until he saw the range.
yeah, I was thinking to get a Taycan. Like why not? Like give it a try. But
Sure.
when you look at the spec, the range turned me off. Like
Yeah.
And
It's
the price,
obsolete
too.
already.
201. Like who's gonna buy a
For 150K as well.
just not talk about money, just talk about range itself. The spec, it's not there yet.
Yeah.
So with like 150K plus, like nobody gonna buy it. Yeah. So thank you, Elon. And
Absolutely.
yeah, thank you very much.
Well, yeah. Well, thanks you guys for your support. It really makes a difference. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't own a Tesla, so hopefully I will.
You ordered a Cybertruck though,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, true.
Yeah.
and you're a shareholder.
but
Are you
it's
still in college?
Yeah. So
Okay.
yeah, I gotta save up.
Okay.
But I will buy one, and I've got the Cybertruck, like you said.
Yep.
But like I've made so many great memories just like through these cars. Like I've met all you guys through Tesla, and this is like amazing. Just like what kind of community just is created through products that you love, and I think that really means a lot. Like I think I've never seen people being so excited about a product before.
Yeah.
Or like having this whole family feeling. It's really
That's
cool.
cool.
Thank you so much.
You're most welcome. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say congrats, first of all, because I feel like it's kind of like a feel-good moment for Tesla, all that's happening.
Yeah.
And obviously, thank you, because like you've inspired all of us. And I think there's not many things in the world that like people get pumped about that are positive about the future. Like I really feel like we need that now. And so Tesla, like bringing us all together has been really awesome and really much needed, I think.
Great. This is really cool.
I think I'd have to agree with what Gally said, just where Tesla's going. You have a car that's actually making a difference with the clean energy, changing the earth, cleaning things up. I mean, it made me excited to see. And you're so efficient, and you actually get things, the way you do it, I don't know, you get it done. and I trust you, and I trust the company, and it's I don't know, it's such a passion. It's amazing. I don't know. I can't get the words out.
We're sometimes a little late, but we get it done in the end.
Yeah.
Always deliver.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for your support.
Well, I just want to say, like, how I described this podcast, like it kind of just grew out grassroots, right? And I look at you as also part of the community. You're as much third row as all of us, right? So I mean, I'm really grateful you were able to come on this and also tell the story.
Absolutely.
Show more people. I hope we can do it again too, because I'm sure there's going to be things that come up that we want to set the record straight too.
Yeah.
And maybe have some celebrations too. So
yeah, sounds good. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of exciting things. Probably, like I said, probably some, disasters and drama along the way. It's never 100% good.
We'll be there to help. So
it's always good to get feedback. Like if you're in my position, what would you do?
Right.
Like a lot of times, like I just don't know if something's wrong. I just don't even know it's wrong. I have to learn it somehow, and then allocate. Try to figure out, okay, how do we deal with all these different issues? Scaling service effectively is very difficult, for example, and so that's like it's like a mundane thing, but it's very important.
Definitely. Yeah, I think the mobile service is incredible. And,
yeah.
I mean, I'm on my 5th Tesla now.
Yeah.
Not the last, because I just keep upgrading them.
Yeah.
Because the last one, I have a P100D Model S, which is outside right there. And I have I got the license plate Get Tesla.
Yeah.
I thought, if you want it, I would love to give it to you. So, yeah, thank you again.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Cool.
Elon, can you sign my Model 3?
Sure.
Oh, yeah. And my Model S, too.
All right, cool.
Okay, thank you.